LCTV. Good evening, everyone. It is now 7 p.m. Welcome to the Town of Littleton Board of Health meeting for January 24th, 2024. A couple quick reminders. As Judy has already said, this meeting is being recorded. It's available on LCTV, and it should be shown live at the moment as well. If you are in the audience, we certainly would love to hear comments for any of our hearings. Please raise your hand using the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen in Zoom, and we will recognize you in due course. We will have an opportunity for public comment beyond our public hearings and discussions at the end of our meeting. So please feel free to stay and share any discussion points you may have outside of our public hearing or discussions that are on our agenda. We do ask folks to stay to a 2-minute limit. And at that point, we are at 7 o'clock. We're going to open our first public hearing, unless there are any points of order prior from the board members before we get started. Seeing none, we're going to open our 7 p.m. public hearing for 18 Middlesex Street. It's a continuance for a Title V local upgrade approval, groundwater reduction for leaching area, and other variance requests. And I believe Mr. Stoddard is representing the petitioner.
I am, but actually, I believe Tom McDowell is supposed to be on the call. Could he be, if he is, could he be brought up to a panelist? He would like to speak as part of the project as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Well, I can start. So I can share my screen if I'm allowed. I am. Cool. Share. So as part of the, I know the last time we met 2 weeks ago, there was a few things that the board was looking for, specifically installing a polyliner between the building and the proposed leach field, and then to prove whether we could or could not do secondary treatment. So we have provided the 40 mil polyliner along the two areas as requested, and then after having talked to Mr. McDowell, he would like to talk to the board prior to me doing the secondary treatment. So I don't know if Tom, if you're available to speak to the board here.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
We can, sir.
Okay. So first, I just want to say thank you for giving me the time to speak today. And I've lived in Littleton my entire life, and this house was a tremendous opportunity for me. And upon purchasing the property, this upgrade, I knew it was needed. It's always been my dream to live in this neighborhood, and I saw this property as a great place to live in Littleton. And sorry, lost my train of thought. Sorry. So I don't. I apologize. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm just full of nerves right now. This home has been a huge opportunity for me, and I will not. I have a budget set aside for the system, and unfortunately, with this upgrade, after talking with the installer, it'll push this outside of my reach. And the existing system is in the groundwater. I want to improve the system, which would be above the groundwater, and that's what I want to do. But unfortunately, with the increase with the secondary treatment, it will put the install out of my reach and outside of my budget. But that is it. But thank you for letting me speak today.
So as far as fitting it, I can fit secondary treatment. It would be I believe it's the jet system. Obviously, I don't have it shown on the plan here because Mr. McDowell wanted to speak with you folks first. We would hope, or based on Mr. McDowell's statements that the board would look favorable upon the request to not require us to have secondary treatment. But I leave that up to the board to have that conversation and discussion.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to start with Mr. Gareffi if, as our agent, if he has any comments, feedback, anything for this. I know he wasn't here at our last meeting from the board. That there was a question that we would have that intermittent stream. Well, I'm not sure if it's officially considered wetlands, but it's an intermittent stream, which would be wetlands. That this would be within 100 feet of the line. It's also offsets and groundwater concerns. So that was the rationale for continuing the hearing and requesting a little bit, see what other options could be available to make it closer to our requirements. So I'm sorry. So go ahead, Jim, if you have anything you'd like to share, we would love to hear it.
No, I mean, it's a tough site. In addition to it being very small and having the wetlands, which does trigger that requirement of your regulation, the house sits right in the middle of it and it's flat. And so anything you do to the site is kind of a nightmare as far as trying to grade the site. So, I mean, the house sits pretty close to the grade as well. So using the geomat and using the 2-foot groundwater offset allows you to try to fit something on the site that hopefully won't. It's hopefully something that they can actually do some surface grading around the house to make sure the water doesn't head towards the house. I think the requirement to put secondary treatment, that I think is a good idea because it certainly reduces the strength of the wastewater. I think the board was seeing tear down rebuilds where you do have the ability to change the grade significantly. And so, and again, I can't speak exactly to why all that had transpired, but that was to me one of the reasons. You know, if you were going to put a new house in and raise all the grade, then you can either put the system in more compliant with the code or use a secondary treatment unit to be able to meet the Title V requirements. I don't know exactly how much the difference is between just installing a septic tank, that's like a jet or a fast. Maybe Chris has a better sense of that.
Yeah, so we did reach out to the installer, and he said it was approximately a $12,000 increase in cost to add that jet system. So it was, it takes it from a reasonable about $30,000 system to, well over 40,000. And we did look at possibly raising the system in the backyard and putting some kind of retaining wall system around it. But as Jim said, we end up, one, we lose the entire backyard. Two, then the grading becomes impossible and all the water ends up sheet flowing into the house, which we don't, we didn't want that either. So, we are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, so to speak.
And so, Dan, the board's always kind of balancing the public health component of it. And obviously there's a cost component for the homeowner. The system, as it's designed, will be far better than what's there on the ground. It'll be above the groundwater. It's pressure dosed, so you'll get a better flow over the entire system, which has a tendency to get a little better treatment because instead of getting just kind of a dribble down to the end of like a gravity system, you're spraying the whole bed, letting it dry out so the bacteria can kind of consume some of the strength, spraying it again. So, does that add a treatment component? It depends on who you talk to. There's a gentleman who runs works for the Mass Estates Treatment Center down the Cape. He's a big proponent of these pressure dosed systems as a way of getting a better quality effluent.
All right. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to go around. We'll do alphabetical. Mr. Baker.
Hi, thanks. Chris, what does a Presby look like on this?
The Presby system actually sits up approximately another foot higher due to the thickness of the pipe. So we could get the same 2-foot reduction, but we actually would our finished grade would be approximately 282 and change, 283. So it'd actually be worse than what we're using here. This geomat is the thinnest system and allowed for the site.
Is it a foot higher?
What's that?
Finished grade is a foot higher?
On this, no, a finished grade would be a foot higher on the Presby. Yeah. And the
So
Presby system
same
is
as if you brought it up to a 3-foot groundwater offset.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, at that point, we'd end up getting rainwater. The runoff would run directly towards the house because we'd be too high. The pressure and also Presbys are not pressure dosing systems; they're gravity feed systems. So we'd end up having to pump it up to a D box, and then it would gravity flow through the Presby system. So
But it's
I think this
treatment.
gets the same similar treatment. It's
Yeah.
just a thinner system.
I might have another question, but please go to the next board member.
Okay. Yep, just let me know if we need to come back. Mr. Davis.
Good evening. So I was the one that made the comment about the 40 mil impervious poly barrier. I thought we usually tried to get that all the way across the system, so that way it was blocking the I see where the tank is, but there's no barrier to the left of that to kind of curry it around. So I always thought and I'll defer to the board whether I'm trying to correct my memory or not, but I thought that's one of the things that we tried to do with the barrier was to make it so that it removed the possibility of it getting into the living space. And I understand that that's kind of like where it's at. And I know we're meeting it where that little piece sticks out. So that's all good. And then refresh my memory, when we voted in, it was within the 100-foot buffer zone. And we were doing that because we were really worried about the effects of the nitrogen and nitrate and nitrogen loading on the wetlands that are there. Hence the reason why we tried to have a system that raised it farther up. So somebody correct my recollection, pretty please.
Dan, if I might.
Please, Jim.
Most of these small treatment plants, the JED or the FAST, they remove the strength of the wastewater. So what they call the biological oxygen demand, or TSS. They don't really do a lot. They'll remove some of the nitrogen, but you end up needing to use a different type of tank that's more dedicated to nitrogen removal for that.
Oh, okay.
Nitrogen removal is a little trickier. The bacteria both need certain temperature range. They need pH conditions and alkalinity conditions. So I think part of it was to reduce the strength. So if the water is heading towards a stream or heading towards a body of water, hopefully you're cleaning some of that up, or heading towards a basement. One other little nuance you mentioned about the barrier, and for good or bad, the state approves these systems based on the manufacturer's specifications. When you pressure dose a geomat system, the breakout requirements, so that's that amount of soil needed out laterally. In a typical system, it's out 15 feet. And a lot of times we use barriers and walls when you can't meet that 15 feet. In this case here, because it's pressure dosed, the state allows, based on the manufacturer's specifications, a 2-foot breakout.
But I know but I know in the past, this board, even with that, has had barriers around it. So what you're saying is, even though there's not a barrier completely around that one side, that we're going to be okay.
It's approvable. Is it worth wrapping the barrier? I don't think it's a big deal to wrap the barrier around the tank.
Got it.
Yeah. So the reason I actually stopped at the tank was purely for installation purposes, and I figured the tank was so deep, the water wasn't going to move laterally through the tank. But we can wrap it around the back side of the tank, or on the house side of the tank.
Yeah.
That's not an issue at all.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Thank you, Kevin. Matt Wason.
Thank you for going back and taking out a look at this so that we can be fully informed. I think we just, as a board now, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place, because we approved our new 100-foot buffer zone with this consideration. And I appreciate what Jim mentioned about, obviously a tear down and rebuild is a different scenario. But every system that we look at that's going to be like this is going to have a similar high cost overrun as a part of it. So I think I just struggle with knowing that as soon as we approve a variance for this, then there's not a lot of ground to stand on to ever not approve the variance in the future. It's not a happy situation. I wish it was something a little easier or not so substantial, but treatment's going to cost what treatment's going to cost, I'm guessing, moving forward. So, not sure what else to think or say. Thank you.
All right, and the chair does not have any questions at this time. Mr. Baker, did you want us to circle back to you?
I wanted to say I appreciate the prospective homeowners' concern about the budget on the installation. I appreciate that it's outside the 50-foot buffer at least. But I do agree with Mr. Wason, and the regulation's in there for a reason. I got a tough time with this one. I gotta be honest with you. And the intermittent stream is kind of a big deal.
All right,
That's
what
all I
is
need.
the
I'll leave
will
it
of the
up- I'll leave it up
board?
to the board. Yeah.
I'm having a
Looks like-
real rough time proposing a positive on this because of the within the 100-foot buffer zone. I really am. But I sympathize with the homeowner. I get it.
On the plan, it looked like you had 4 requests for variances. I did not see a variance from the requirement for treatment within 100 feet of the wetlands on your list of variance or approval requests.
Looks
I see
like
groundwater.
Yeah, you're right.
I see groundwater offset. I see sieve analysis. I see distance from the crawl space from 10 to 5, and I see a 2-foot reduction in groundwater offset within 100 feet of. But I don't see a request from a local regulation for not treating within 100 feet of wetlands.
Right. You don't see it because it's not on the plan. Okay. I don't know how we move forward with is Jim still? Oh, Jim's still on.
And it mentions within 100 feet of the bordering vegetated wetlands, but it's not specific to the town's regs.
Right.
Mr. Baker,
I'd like to make a motion to continue. And in hopes that Mr. Stoddard could come back with or the homeowner with some photos of the backyard and what might be possible with a 3-foot. You know, what other kind of mitigation can be put in place with a 3-foot groundwater offset, and you know whether that cost impact is similar to the cost of adding treatment to the system.
Okay.
I'd second that.
okay, I have a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Matt Wason,
Wason, yes.
and the chair votes yes. Ms. Stoddard, Mr. McDowell, does that make sense what we're looking for some ideas?
Yeah, we'll come back with oops, I just lost that video. Yeah, we'll revise the plans, increase them to 3 feet, and show you what the impacts would be to that to the property here.
I would also say, Chris, like as soon as we're talking about this kind of cost overrun, I feel like you gotta just like pull out all the stops and see what happens. What would a system in the front look like? I know the water line's there and the plumbing's coming out the back, but you know,
So the problem,
Decide 100 foot, so I don't know.
right? The problem with the front yard is I'm going to be then asking for 2 property line offsets, the building offset, relocating the water. I don't even know if I could I don't think I could actually physically fit it there. I think it's mathematically impossible.
All right.
But I can,
Take a look.
yeah, I can conceptually drop a couple things on there from my perspective. You know,
A driveway costs less than a treatment system.
yeah, but the problem with that is it's going to be it'll be 2 feet higher, and then you can't get in the garage. So, but I'll look at it. I'll see what we can come up with.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So we've continued our hearing for 18 Middlesex. Our next hearing is for 23 to 31 Stevens Street. It's a continuation for a shared system agreement and a Title V waiver. I don't think we had anything in our packet for this. Jim, did we have any updates from them? I know they were still working on a system.
Jim, you're muted.
I'll never get used to this. I think the last time I talked was before your last meeting, and it sounded like they were working with an engineer, but I haven't seen any kind of proposed or conceptual plan for what they, based on your meeting, what they were planning to do.
Oh, it looks like somebody's there is a person with a hand in the audience.
We do have a hand in the audience. Thomas Gibbons, I'm going to promote you.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
How are you? My name's Tom Gibbons, and I wanted to give a presentation and update the board and ask for additional, ask for the Title V waiver. I know you know my associate, Emily Langlaise, who's been before you a number of times. So as I mentioned, I represent Thumbtack Realty Trust regarding the 2 properties, 23 to 31 Stevens Street and 1 Adams Street. And these 2 properties are served by a granite block cesspool as described in the Title V report dated October 6th of 2023, which was performed by RM Ratter and filed with your board. The original report had an incorrect statement in section 4 that stated there was discharge or ponding of effluent to the surface of the ground or the surface water. That was an incorrect statement, and Ratter has since submitted an amendment to that dated October 24th of 2023. And I believe the board has that amendment.
I don't remember seeing it. It may have been there, but I'm going to also, just as we go through this, if it's okay, we're going to double check. Mr. Greffy, have you seen that amended report? I know we hadn't had that discussion. You're on mute, sir.
I'm going to look now and see if we've got an amended report for that site.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry. So Mr. Gibbons, if you want to continue while we look.
So Jim, it was dated October 24th of 2023, and it was addressed to the Nashoba Board of Health at the Air address. So if you don't have it, I'll make sure that you get it, but my understanding was that they filed it. But at any rate, there is no breakout. So I understand that the system is in technical failure because the liquid depths in the cesspool is less than 6 inches below the invert, or available volume is less than a half a day's flow. As the board knows, both of these properties are set to be connected to the municipal sewer system that's being constructed now in the common area. It's my understanding that the municipal system is expected to be operational in approximately 18 months. So last summer, my associate Emily began approaching the board to inquire about Title V waiver based on the expectation that would be connecting to the new municipal system. She attended a number of boards, talked with Jim, drafted a proposed agreement between the owners of 23 to 31 Stevens Street and 1 Adams Street. And that agreement provided for quarterly inspections, periodic pumping, unrestricted access to the property by the board or its agent to inspect the system, and in the event of a breakout or discharge to the surface, before the connection to the municipal system, then repairs would be undertaken by my client. Now, we were provided with the DEP shared system agreement by Jim. However, that form is really geared towards a new shared system, and the contents and requirements don't really fit within for our situation. So the system serving these two properties dates back to approximately 1957. There's been no breakout or discharge to the surface, and although in technical failure, RADA Corporation indicates that in a letter to my client dated September 1st of 2023, which was attached to the original Title V inspection report filed with the board, that, quote, we can maintain the function of the system with frequent pumping. I'm told that RADA considers pumping every 2 months would be sufficient to maintain the system. The 1 Adam Street property is under agreement to be sold, and it's subject to us securing a Title V waiver for the system. But for our request for the Title V waiver, this system would not have come to the board's attention. We diligently communicated with the Littleton Water Department regarding the municipal system's planning, project bidding, and bid acceptance. And when the bid was signed by the town, we then pursued the Title V waiver. And now everybody knows that that system is under construction. So 1 Adam Street has been owned by my client in the same family since the 1950s. The proposed purchaser of the property is the current tenant, and he's been a long-term business person there and intends to continue to run his shop at that location. So RADA is confident that they can maintain the system until the connection to the municipal system. Again, there's been no breakout or discharge. So what I'm asking the board tonight is to agree in principle to a Title V waiver for this system. And then I'll work with Jim to come up with an appropriate agreement that would give the board comfort level that, you know, we will maintain the system. There'll be no breakout. I would propose that we use the agreement that Attorney Langlaise had submitted before, but we can add or beef up some of the provisions. So it would have an amount that would be held in escrow. Would determine who's going to hold that money. My office can hold it. One of the attorneys for the property owners could hold it, or both of them. We would provide for pumping at least every 2 months, and if the board required more, we'd agree to that. And if there was any breakout before we hook up to the system, then we'd take appropriate remedial action up to and including the installation of a tight tank. If the board's inclined to do that, I will work diligently with Jim to get an agreement and bring that back to the board in the next meeting or two. We'll do everything we can to make it the next meeting, but certainly within the next meeting or two. And if I can answer any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gareffi, do you have any feedback response you can share?
Sure. So, when the Title V came in, I went out and took a look at it just because I was trying to figure out where the system was. And so if you were to turn the corner onto Adam Street and the Stephen Street building's right there, and then the garage building's right next to it, there's a driveway in between the two buildings. The cesspool is in that space. The day I was out there, and this was probably early on in these discussions, there was no evidence that it had discharged to the surface of the ground. And while we were talking, looked up our pumping records. There's some pumping records we have from 2014. There's pumping records from 2023 when they pumped the system as part of the Title V inspection. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of pumping records otherwise. We do know what the groundwater table is at 17 Stevens because we had done soil testing many years ago for repair there. And we actually did soil testing on the Adam Street lot that we're talking about. So we know the water tables between 5.5 and 6 feet below ground. And that's where the technical failure comes in. It's the bottom of the cesspool is in the water table. So at this point here, if it's not surfacing, if they can maintain it, all failed systems by their nature need to be addressed. This one's not an imminent failure or imminent public health hazard in that people aren't coming into contact with it. It's at this point being maintained. I believe the bed is still in the Stevens Street building. I think that one other space is occupied too. So I think there's only one unoccupied space. So it's probably at its fullest occupancy, except for that one other space. So, if again, I had two concerns. One is making sure it's maintained. And the other one is where there are two parties to this, making sure that the rights and obligations and responsibilities are maintained. Because what the board doesn't want to do is deal with two people pointing fingers at one another saying, no, it's their responsibility. And if it were to fail, then a tight tank would be probably most appropriate for the time being to be able to put, have a vessel essentially to put the sewage in so it could properly be handled. Again, the legal questions, I guess, got me scratching my head a bit more than does the public health one at this point here.
All right. Thank you, sir. We go around the board and see if we have any questions from the board members. We're going to do reverse order this time. We can mix it up. We go with Matt Wason.
I don't think I have any questions. I think I understand the scenario to Jim's point. So if it's just a matter of putting together the legal framework for how we just make sure it's managed appropriately until some time as it is connected to town sewer, which is no guarantees, but that is a pretty prime location. So I assume that will be connected in and kind of readdress it at that point. So I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Matt. Kevin Davis?
We have the form in place now to do the exception for, you have a failed system. Pretty sure that was the thing that was voted on like that same night or the night after or something like that. Is that correct?
Are you asking me or Dan? Or?
I'm asking anybody because I'm pretty sure we approved a form and we approved a procedure.
I believe you did. I had presented a form. We would look through the process. So I think it just needed to be tweaked. This one, I think, it's the first time in all the years I've been doing this that we've had a shared system looking for a Title V waiver. And so all of a sudden you had that element of, oh, how do you handle this to it? And that's the legal questions that I mentioned.
Yeah, but I still think we need that form filled out so that way.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're absolutely.
There's a process and a waiver. There's a process that needs to be followed for the waiver and all that kind of good stuff. So that hasn't been done yet. We had other cesspools, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, that were in technical failure, that we had the owners mediate, which means more pumping, or did we ask them to put in a tight tank? It was like within a year or two that we've had this happen. And we had them put in a tight tank. I'm pretty sure. Maybe Mr. Baker can refresh my memory and tell me that I'm wrong. But I seem to remember this.
I think where you had a tight tank, I'd have to look.
Over by the lake, they put in a new tight tank for a repair.
Right. Okay. So it was in failure. So we had something that was, in the groundwater near the lake, which, okay, but this is still in the groundwater. And we asked that owner to put in a tight tank to do the repair. And that was the same kind of thing that we said on the waiver form, that we would need to make sure that the system was in some sort of compliance or remediation or something until they hooked up to town. So I'm just trying to connect all the dots in my brain.
So I think, and one of the reasons I asked Brenda to put the Title V waiver process back on the agenda so we could have kind of refresh all our memory kind of conversations on that. I think with the one on the lake, that is the system the house is going to have. So it's not like you're waiting to tie into a permanent solution. That is the permanent solution, where I think the Title V waiver process and, whoever came up with that was looking for ways that you could have somebody with a system that wasn't an imminent hazard, kind of limp along, if you will, until they could actually tie into the permanent solutions. I think that's the difference between the two.
Right. Understood. I'm trying to figure out where this is going to fall, because I hear what you're saying, but that means it's the bottom of the cesspool is in water. Okay.
And I was just looking at the report. The report I have, Title V report I have, is from October 6th of 23. And in the comments in the cesspool section, that's the part that they filled out. It says at the time of the inspection, liquid level is 3 feet below the invert. So it's not failing. There's still 3 feet of capacity. One of the reasons why the cesspool will work in that location is that it's very bony, sandy, gravelly soil. So
Okay.
just so I could, and it does say granite block construction, which, yeah. That I can't imagine that was from the 50s. It might even be older than that. I don't know.
I was going to say that's older. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Kevin Davis. Kevin Baker.
Jim, does it say how many gallons that system is? The tank?
So in 22, it looks like they also pumped the cesspool and they took 2,000 gallons out of it. But it doesn't really have a design flow because cesspools don't really have a design flow.
I think one of the red flag
Yep.
that sort of made us go, wait a minute, was the gallons per day actual usage that the attorney had given us from the water bill. So I don't know if you still have that info, because we heard, what did we hear? Like 350 gallons a day or something.
Yeah. It was huge.
And so I don't know if that number's correct, but that's the thing that made us all go, wait a minute.
Right.
So I feel like if we could confirm that, and maybe the attorneys can or not.
If
I'm-
I'm, Mr. Chairman?
raising his
Yeah,
hand.
Mr. As I see, yeah, Mr. Gibbons, if your response, that'd be great.
Yeah, so on page 8 of 18 of the inspection report, they say the average of both buildings is 347 gallons per day.
Which was it was a substantial amount of water going, right in.
Right.
Because it's not coming above 3 feet to the invert.
That's right. So
where's it going, I guess, is the question.
So there may be, I mean, again, it's, if that level comes up, so they measured on a particular day whether all that water is going in at that particular time or not. But let's say that water goes from that pit, like a leach pit of any, well, it's a cesspool, but it's like a leach pit.
Yeah.
If as that water rises, it's going to go out the part that's not clogged with a biomat and go into the gravelly soil around it until it drops back down. The fact that it's kind of sitting at 3 feet or 3 feet below the invert may indicate either that's where the water table is lower, may indicate where the side walls of the cesspool have a biomat that's not letting the water go out is readily. Kind of like a leach field gets a biomat to kind of treat the water as it goes through. On a pit, it's on the sidewall, or cesspool, it's on the sidewall. And there are cases in town, cases all over the place, where cesspools filled, and way back when they used to pipe the cesspool to another cesspool, and the first cesspool became a tank because it was essentially sealed. And the Title V inspection process even kind of gives a nod to those old types of systems. So.
The calculation I just ran, if it was 2,000 gallons, it'd be 5 days or 6 days. You'd have to pump it out.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I could get an idea of what kind of capacity that pit has above the water. Let's see. So
That was the only comment I had.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. So, well, Jim does some math, pi r squared.
I'm they're describing. They've got a length measurement in there in a cylinder, so I'm going to assume that's the depth. But they also have a depth, so I'm trying to figure out what the L means and the.
So I think when we talked about our Title V waiver process for properties with sewer coming before the house, in a foreseeable future, I think DEP uses 24 months as kind of their window, and we are definitely within that window. Really looking at that bridging system that to save homeowners and property owners to put in an entirely Title V compliant system, knowing that within some foreseeable timeline that public sewer is going to be available in front of the building. So I think right now we're literally looking at that bridge piece from a public health perspective. And, we originally had that ponding report. We're now saying we don't think that's accurate, or rather saying that was a a miscommunication in their piece that, so we're looking, well, technically in failure, but from a public health perspective, it's probably not an imminent hazard, as long as, ongoing monitoring is occurring. I guess I'm not quite as concerned about that piece of it, as long as we're providing, monitoring and mitigation as needed, whether that's, pumping or, I'm not sure what we want to look at for monitoring timeline, whether it's monthly, every 2, and pumping as needed. I'm not quite sure. I think the bigger concern in this case and why it came before us is that whole, who is the responsible party? This is not my house with my system that I need a bridge waiver until septic is outside of my house. The responsible party is obviously the property owner. In this case, with the shared system, making sure we have a responsible party, whether that's through the shared system agreement and escrow, or whether that's one property owner taking legal responsibility for that shared system. I think that's kind of where it got to us. Why we really, it is more complex than simply, I need an 18-month bridge until sewer is in front of my house. We want to make sure that if this system does fail, I'm hoping it not, I don't expect it to after all these years, but if it does, we need to make sure that we have a responsible party that will take responsibility in the shared system. And without an agreement, as our attorneys I'm sure are aware, with a shared system without an agreement, just like a condo without a homeowners association, everybody's looking at everybody else. Nope, it was their pipe, it wasn't my pipe. So that's where we are as a public health body, of making sure that what if situation is covered to protect public health. And unfortunately, like so many things, it comes down to who's going to pay for the repair and the mitigation if it needs to be done. So Attorney Gibbons, if you have.
Yeah, so, and I certainly appreciate that. And what I would suggest, and I'll work with Jim, is that my client remains the responsible party, because that's what obviously the buyers would want. And I will suggest to the attorneys for the 2 owners that I hold the money in my IOLTA account. I'm right here in air, so that, and Jim knows me well. So if there's funds that are needed, you don't have to go far. They'll be in my IOLTA account. So, and I know that the board will want to see that agreement, but that's what I'm thinking, as far as, the terms.
Mr. Mason.
I think then the thing that's missing for me is we're agreed that we can put together an agreement, and I have full confidence that the agreement will make us all happy. I think for me, then it's the gap of, well, how do we know how bad the system really is so that the agreement can describe exactly what needs to be done to keep it within framework? Like you're saying, I mean, that's 2,500 gallons a week. So if this is going to require weekly pumping, that's what we need to know. So is that something, Jim, you're going to be able to investigate and figure out some details so that we just know whatever the agreement has, it's going to be well covered?
So what I can tell you, just doing some quick math, the reason I was having a hard time with it, it's a rectangular pit. It's so that's why. If we were designing something like that today, it doesn't have a lot of capacity based on the square footage of the sidewall, even if you use sand and gravel, but it does have the ability to hold like 750 gallons of water. And so the fact that it wasn't full, but it's leaking out the sidewall too at the same time. So it's got the ability, 3 feet of essentially sidewall of that rectangular pit is area that still seems to be operating as a leach pit, cesspool, if you will. So,
Attorney Gibbons.
Yeah, and so I'm not an engineer, but RADA, and we've talked to them a number of times, and they feel confident that if they do it every 2 months, that would suffice. But as I say, if the board needs more, wants more, we're fine with that also. And clearly, any sign of breakout, then we're going to have to deal with it. But there hasn't been any breakout as of yet. And then I just note that in 310 CMR 15301, Section 4, where it talks about Title V waivers, and in there, the inspection, it's an exclusion to the inspection. So basically, what that regulation provides is that a board could say, you don't even have to have it inspected. You got to have an agreement to hook up. And I'm not saying that that's what we're doing here. We did inspect it. The board asked for it, and absolutely understand that. my only experience with this is through the town of Shirley, which I think installed their system in 99 or 2000. And so I was a younger attorney then, but I remember a lot of this coming up then, and I'm familiar with what they did, you know, and so long as it was going to be connected up within 2 years, I don't think they required inspection, but immaterial here. So, you know, I think we can get an agreement that will hopefully satisfy the board that the money's there, that you guys have access, that we will pump it and maintain it. And if there's any sign of breakout, we will take immediate action.
What about the waiver process?
So I would say they still have to get, that document that your board approved, it still gets filed. It just gets filed with some additional legal paperwork so that you can address the ownership and that part of it.
And I think, Emily, did you?
Yeah, so essentially the process, as the board approved, was the filing of an application with the Title V report and subsequent deed to the property, which I did send over to Brenda earlier in this year. We sent over the Title V report, as you guys have, and then the deed to the property. And we can certainly make sure we have that application. And if you know, I don't believe there's any further information on the application that you may need, but we can definitely do that. But I think the process really was the application and then approval, and then that agreement that we're going to record with the Registry of Deeds. And then that's what I think Jim just mentioned. We'll still go forward with that that agreement with the Registry of Deeds, but just with some more legal paperwork, as he mentioned.
And so maybe, oops, sorry.
Go ahead, Jim, and then we'll get to Ms. Baker.
So again, this may be one of those town council takes a peek at it, just whether you include the ownership information in your waiver process proper, or whether the documents are recorded one on top of the other. That may be the only difference. But my thought is you could handle this ownership piece probably by adding language to the waiver process.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I guess I just have one question. Jim, in your professional opinion, based on the numbers, how often should this be pumped to best protect the public health of Littleton?
Now, I guess my thought is having somebody inspect it maybe monthly, and that way somebody's taking a look at it. If it's the level's coming up, they can pump it. If it's not, come back and pump it every 2 months if that's inappropriate. It's been working. I have not received a complaint about it on all the time I've been in town, and it's a pretty densely populated area of town. I would assume if there was sewage running down that alleyway, somebody would have called. But I haven't gotten a call. So, but to me, having it inspected regularly, and then pumped every couple of months seems quite reasonable.
And
Thank you.
And I could certainly get something from RADA that we have retained them to do that. Someone will go out and take a look at it every month, pump it every 2 months. And if in their monthly inspection, they determine that it needs to be pumped, we will have it pumped at that point also.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the board? And what is the board's pleasure at the moment?
I'm guessing I make a motion for continuance to see the actual document, because that's what we've done in the past. But
Mr. Baker?
Just wondering, I know they submitted some paperwork on this to Brenda, and I know because that's when we went through and approved the checklist of things that we wanted.
where I've lost the bubble. I don't know where.
It's not in our packet tonight, I know.
Yeah, so I think that the issue was with that we had an agreement going on, and then the shared system aspect popped into it. So even if we did have an agreement approved, we'll have to adjust that at this point.
I don't remember us ever having seen a shared system agreement. I think that's why it went back to them, and then they were negotiating between the two property owners or property buyers how it was going to work, and I think that's how we ended up back here today, of trying to resolve that, how that should look.
Right. So we still haven't seen that agreement. So I think my motion for continuance makes sense. Do we see the document?
Okay, I have a motion. I don't have a second yet, but I'm happy to have a discussion. Mr. Gibbons.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely fine with the continuance. I mean, all I was hoping to get today was an agreement in principle that, yes, we could do this. Now you need to hammer out the agreement that will be satisfactory to the board.
We obviously can't give you that officially, but I see lots of heads going up and down. So take that to
Second.
mean whatever you'd like it to mean.
I appreciate that.
I'll second the motion on the table, implying that we're going to go down that road.
All right. I have a motion and 2 seconds. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you very much for your understanding and your work on this, attorneys. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully in 2 weeks. If not, then I apologize off the top of my head, either 2 or excuse me, 4 or 5 weeks, whatever the calendar falls, for our next meeting with an agreement in place.
Thank you very much. And should we just deal with Brenda on, my hope is we will be ready in 2 weeks, but we'll let her know.
Perfect. Yep.
In 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. My calendar isn't open. So thank you, Matt.
14
Yep.
February.
Work with Brenda and she'll make sure you are on the agenda whenever you are ready, as long as it's more than 48 hours prior to our meeting.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
I apologize. We just have continued that hearing. I did not ask for any public comment. That's on me. I apologize. I did not see any hands in the audience, however. So I apologize for that. And as always, from the board, please keep me honest in this one when I miss that one. So, but I have no hands in the audience, so I think we are good with the continuance on that one. Okay, we're a little bit late for our 7:20 public hearing for Sanctuary Medicinals with a presentation on their expansion plan and odor mitigation plan. As we identify who's coming forward to present, we did get a packet in our packet, excuse me, there is a large amount of information regarding the plan.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it my opportunity?
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks a lot. My name is Peter Durning. I'm an attorney at Burns and Levinson. My partner, Tom Mackey, I believe, was before you before. We have a bunch of folks from our team that are present tonight. From the company, we have Nick St. Mary and Kevin Coyne. And from Tech Environmental, we have Mike Lannon. I'm going to be turning it over to Mike to do a short presentation. I see that Brenda's on as well. I want to thank Brenda for her help in receiving our materials and getting them out to the board. I think, as you'll see, through a variety of circumstance and trying to coordinate to come back to a meeting where Jim Greffey was available, we haven't been back before the board in some time. I think the last time we were formally on the agenda was back in the summer in July. We have continued to have meetings with and discussions with the planning board, and we will be before the planning board again next week. But we wanted to take the opportunity to come before the Board of Health to provide an update on revisions to the odor management plan and to provide some more specific details on the activities that have been taking place at the facility and some of the design elements of the expansion. With that, I'll pause and let Mike Lannon from Tech Environmental walk through a very short slide deck to provide that background for you.
There we go. Can you all hear me?
We can, sir. Go ahead.
Awesome. Great. There's quite a bit of materials in your packet, which we don't need to go over all that right now. We have short 10 slides here with a couple of drawings to show you where we're going in the future. But we wanted to talk about the sanctuary medicinal odor management improvements that have been made really since the last meeting. There we go. Since the last meeting in 7/26. That was the last time we were in front of you. At the time, we were discussing some recent odor complaints and improvements identified and underway. Specifically, we were talking about some of the exterior outside HVAC units for the grow rooms They had original gaskets on it, and over time, with essentially just degradation from UV degradation, the gaskets had become more brittle, and although they're under pressure and they're fully tightened, they were starting to leak a little bit. So all those gaskets have been replaced. And some of the pumps on the HVAC units that collect the condensate and send it back to the water treatment room to be reused had become a little plugged over time. So we took that time this summer to help develop an odor management plan, which we sent a copy to you, I believe, in August or early September, and we sent another copy again this week. It's a odor management plan, which is sort of a working document, so it's continually being updated. So you have the current version right now, and within that we have these new proactive odor monitoring rounds where we had conducted odor training for the staff so that they could go around and check for odor, to monitor the odor baseline and to see if the odor baseline had increased at all, and if so, why would that have occurred? At the time, we talked about 3 new recirculating carbon absorption systems that were going inside the building. One was going in the office area, one was going in the loading dock area, and one was going in the hallway area. And the other thing that was brought up by the Board of Health was a dashboard that was desired to kind of show what was operating at the time, and also what would be doing with either complaints or rounds. And this is the dashboard right now in its current form. It's this website called www.taylorstreetlog.com. And as you can see, it shows all of the odor control systems. On the left side, some of these are part of the new system. Some of these are the existing system here. And then the right screen is actually directly below it, but I just cut it into 2 pieces to fit it on this slide. And it's showing these report logs. So this will be odor complaints along with the rounds that they're doing. They're going to load these up on the site. And then we have the odor level key, which is based off the N-butanol odor scale. One of the things that's going to be increasing odor control some more, as we talked about before, was the new building that they're adding, the new ancillary building, which is what they're in front of the planning board for. The new building, just to refresh your memory, will add 0 grow capacity. There's no more growing of cannabis in the building. They're at 100% of their capacity now. This is strictly to help them with the processing of it, basically to be more efficient. I think a lot has been learned over the last 5 years in the cannabis industry, and there was such a huge focus initially on growing it in the right way where things weren't contaminated and you were growing a good product. I think now there's just as much emphasis on what do you do with it once it's grown, and that's processing it, packaging it, grinding it, turning it into other usable end products. And so that's what this new building is going to be. And the beauty of the new building is which I'll show you in a moment, it's going to have its own odor control system in it as well. So all the activities that are currently taking place in the existing building will now be spread across the existing building with the existing odor control and this new building with additional odor control. We've also added redundancy to the system because I think that was one of the things that we had talked about in the summertime. For example, the carbon systems inside, they're treating the air constantly. Any air that leaks out of the grow rooms, which are under positive pressure, the hallways are under a negative pressure. Any air that leaks out in there now is going around in circles through activated carbon to be refreshed before it goes through the ultimate ozone system through the roof for the existing building. This is just a schematic of the existing building, color-coded. This includes a bunch of the things that were in place or have been in place since July. The 2 light blue squares in the middle, rectangles, those are the negative pressure exhaust stacks where the where there's one ozone system now, and there's a second redundant one that's on order that's going in as well, so that they'll always have one operating or operational at all times to make sure that there is more redundancy. The light blue doors on the outside are the high-speed doors that are in place, in addition to the security metal doors that are in place, and that is to capture odor better. The one in the upper left is in the water treatment room. That one's not used that much. The one in the upper right is in the shipping and receiving area, and that will actually see much less use with the new building, because the new building will have a dedicated product shipping area, and this will be more of equipment coming in and out and supplies, as opposed to the other one, which will be more of the actual product, which I'll show you in that drawing in a minute. The other things on this are emergency exits that don't allow access for security and obviously to contain odor. There are 3 air curtains. Those are the light green ones. And that's sort of what's in the existing building now. And right now, in this upper hallway, especially the corridor 125, the one, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but right through the middle here, that's the one that sort of has a lot of equipment in it, a lot of storage of product at times that's getting ready to be processed and so on, that can't take place in these rooms. And you'll see when you see the new building in a second how much more space there will be to do the processing. This is the proposed plan of the new building. So the way it connects up to the old building is over here on the left. That's that shipping and receiving that we saw in the upper right of the last drawing. There'll be a new hallway built. These are actually at different grades. So this is there's a hallway here that goes downhill, has a little platform and goes downhill again. It's a few feet off center because of the way the lot's set up. Within this building, this green area is essentially the grinding area, the place where the product is brought down and getting ready to be made into some of the other products. This is the product area in here in the purple, and that's where everything's kind of put into vaporized form or put into packaging. And then in the upper left here is where the label creation area will be. And then there'll be this secure storage in the yellow here. And then there's a second loading dock area, which is the transport staging. This will make it much more efficient. Things can go out into that area, sit there ready to go. Boom, they're in the truck and they're out. There isn't stuff going in and out, moving items in and out of the way as it's going on now, where the other one is shipping, receiving, and shipping of product. That one will be shipping and receiving of materials. This one will be shipping of product, essentially. As part of our discussions with the planning board, they wanted to see some preliminary HVAC designs. And so we have 3 sheets here that kind of show the design at this point. This first one is the heating recirculation system. So this is entirely things that are going to go around in circles within the building, no air in and out, no odor control needs associated with this. But as you can see, there are a lot of basically heat pumps in all the areas to take care of that issue. This one here is the fresh air supply drawing. You can see that there's a centralized unit right in the middle here. Oops, I'm sorry, excuse me. Right in the middle here, and all of the ductwork's heading out into the different areas to supply air. There's a significant amount of fresh air now being added to this area, more so than in the existing building, because some of the codes had changed a little bit that require a little bit more fresh air. It's likely related to COVID and everything else. Everything now needs a little bit more fresh air, and this is part of it. Obviously, we're adding fresh air. We still want to keep the building negative. So we have an odor mitigation HVAC room here, number 27. That's part of the exhaust system. So the next drawing is the exhaust ducting and odor control. And so within this new building, here's that HVAC room again. Currently, we're showing the the exhaust a carbon unit, because we talked to the board. The board preferred carbon more going forward with some of the newer stuff. So we listened, and we're putting in a carbon system here. The ozone is going to be strictly related to the existing building. This is all going to be carbon in this building. We're doing the same thing with sort of the pink or fuchsia squares here, which are the recirculating units within each headspace. You can see that the grinding area here, these are all the same size, but the grinding area is much smaller. So we have more air exchanges in this area where dust and odor is higher. Then as we go through the process, the odor becomes less. Many facilities don't even provide odor control to the finished product because it's all sealed up and so on. But we find that there's still some mild residual odor. So there's going to be a system here that's going to treat both the label room and the storage room here. Again, another high-speed door shown up at the top here. We have air curtains here and here and here. And the red ones are they're labeled emergency exit doors, but essentially what they are doors that will never be used. They're essentially there so that when they have to move large pieces of equipment in and out, they can go through those doors. So they're really not even exit doors. They're just access panels that are always locked and alarmed. So essentially that's the setup for the odor control, the improvements that we've made since July to now, and then the things that are planned for the future. I think one of the things that the facility has learned a lot since July till now is the proactive rounds do a lot to identify things that might be going on with those HVAC systems outdoors. They're kind of, I don't want to say out of sight, out of mind, but they're away from what they're doing on a regular basis. But so doing these rounds daily, they can find systems where maybe the drainage isn't quite right, or there's too much pressure in one or not enough pressure in another. And they've been making adjustments with those. And that has helped a lot. And I think everyone can agree in the neighborhood, at least they've told Nick and so on, that the odor level has dropped dramatically since we had those events at late spring, early summer. And they'll continue to drop with this new ancillary building and additional odor control. So that's basically it. Thank you for listening. There's much more information in the packets, but
Yeah,
that's
Mike, if I can, just a quick, I know that you've supplied a revised version of the odor management plan. Are there just some elements that you'd like to highlight that the current revision includes, particularly in terms of redundancy and supply, that might be informative to the board?
Yeah, so a lot of this has to do, yes, you're absolutely right. You can divide it up into two little segments. The first segment is, what are we doing for redundancy now in the existing building that wasn't being done before July of last year? And that is the recirculating carbon systems were added into the interior. The second ozone system is being installed for that building. And then in the new building, we're going with more air being turned over on a regular basis within the building, as well as the details that are coming up in the design. As I mentioned, the OMP is a working document. So we put in what was going to go into the auxiliary building in that first version. We have more details in it now, and there'll be more details once it's actually installed too.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do the board members have any questions in response to the materials that have been presented?
You're on mute, Dan. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Happens to all of us, even after all this time.
For sure.
Mr. Gareffi, as our health agent, did you have any feedback?
Sure. So I took a look at the plan that came in September and quickly scanned the revised plan. And I guess what I would say is I think the approach is great. I mean, again, they talk about ways that they can go around and determine if there's odor leaking out of their building. So odor training for their staff, odor surveys so they can go around the building and determine where odors may be coming out. They talk about operation and maintenance and the equipment. You heard Mr. Lannon talk about the HVAC system gaskets. and talk about, just escape my mind here, the additional systems that they're putting in. The drains and the HVAC.
The drain pumps, yes.
Pumps, yeah. So,
Yes, sir.
so now you have a basis for building a odor management plan. And in that odor management plan, again, it goes through and it talks about an operation and maintenance plan. When should we check the gaskets? How often should we be doing the surveys? So again, it's all building. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not an engineer, nor do I understand HVAC systems all that well. And so that to me is kind of the only kind of question in my mind. All of the work building up to the plan, all of the components, the fact that you're adding the additional building but not more space, all of that makes sense, that you might be able to mitigate the odors, which have a lot less, I will say. The only question I think I had recommended to the board is that since we're not HVAC folks, is to, prior to building permit, whatever HVAC system is going in there, an engineer, someone who's familiar with HVAC systems, look at that and make sure it all seems reasonable for what's trying to be accomplished. I think it's taken a while to get here to kind of understand why the smells are going into the buildings the way they're going, opening doors and airlocks and treatment. So I think a lot of effort's been made. And like I say, the documents, they're all very encouraging. That would be the only comment I had to the board, is that as part of this, part of the planning board approval, I think I mentioned to you that I would recommend the board recommend that system be reviewed by an HVAC engineer to make sure it's going to do what we think needs to happen.
And Mr. Kane,
All right.
if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks a lot. So I just wanted to follow up on those comments, Jim, and I appreciate them. One of the things that we wanted to emphasize today, I don't know that he necessarily needs to come up onto the panel, but with us today is Kevin Coyne. And I just want to stress in terms of the manner in which Sanctuary is addressing the situation. Essentially, it's really two-pronged. They have the outside odor expertise from the engineers at Tech Environmental, and then they have the on-site team headed by Kevin, who's performing the rounds, doing the maintenance and observation at the facility on a daily basis. And it's really the combination of those two elements, excellent planning, design of the odor control management plan, and then dedicated staff that are doing the implementation of that and observations at the facility, that we really wanted to stress is something, that the OMP really gets breathed into life by the staff members that are policing it and responding to issues. So we're very pleased with this approach. And again, I should stress there's nothing necessarily before the Board of Health seeking approval. We're partly here as a courtesy to give you an update on the status of where things are. To the extent, particularly if Mr. Gruffy was able to provide a note similar to one that's in the packet tonight to the planning board in terms of your observations and the result of this meeting, I think that would be helpful, just so that the planning board has some formal communication from this body or from the health agent about the status of your review. But again, in terms of the pending approvals, that is before the planning board at this time.
Thank you, sir. Before we go to the board members, I do see a hand, and I've been there for a bit in the audience. I don't have a name. It looks like it's just SmartPad E200. If that, whoever that party is, if you are okay waiting till after the board has asked any questions, and I do see your hand. I had seen it for a while. We will get to you during our public portion of this hearing, if that's okay. That person went away, and now they've been promoted. Uh-oh. Okay. In the meantime, Mr. Baker, questions, comments, feedback.
Mr. Lannon, thank you for your
Well,
He's been moved to the audience. We're going to bring him back forward again.
I thought it was something I said. I apologize.
No, we're bringing.
Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
If you wanted me to leave, you just could have told me.
Sorry about that, Mr. Baker. Welcome back, and welcome.
I apologize, Mr. Baker.
That's all right.
Can you see me or not?
We got you.
Yes,
Gino.
we can see you, Gino.
Okay, I've been listening since the beginning. I'm proud of you guys.
Thank you. So,
All right,
Mr.
Mr.
Lanning,
Baker.
great presentation. Thank you very much. You guys are really good listeners. We sat down with you in July and we talked about the dashboard. We talked about boots on the ground, going out there and doing the sniff test. And that's awesome that you implemented that. Thank you very much. Curious to know how that dashboard's going, what you guys are seeing, what the neighbors are saying.
So, Mr. Baker, if I may, it is live. It is on the web right now, but it is not populated with live data at this time. In part, we wanted feedback from this board and the planning board before we flip the switch to go live. So that what we're showing you is essentially the infrastructure of what it will present, but it hasn't officially gone live yet.
And Jim, what are the neighbors saying? Have we received any complaints since July, September?
We've had a handful, and the attorney for the facility requests the public records, and so generally they're email comments. It's generally on an overcast day that we're getting them, and they're not very often, but sometimes sometimes we have them like over the course of a weekend. We'll get a series of odor complaints. Sometimes it's a day here or there. Sometimes I'm able to kind of confirm that there is or isn't, and so I try to have a dialogue back and forth. So again, certainly not like it was, but it happens from time to time.
And maybe it's Nick who can confirm the dates when those additional carbon filters got installed, because that's when we were supposed to meet again with you.
Correct. Yeah, I can look back as to when exactly those were, but I believe that was right. Not long after we spoke, the carbon filtration was added in. So I can't put my finger on the exact date of it. I can look back in my records, but it was right around then. I do want to add in to having all the complaints, being able to log those. We're able to see correlations, and that's why on that dashboard, having our equipment and having it if it's operational or non-operational, it's very important. So, we start receiving complaints, or we can correlate an issue with a odor mitigation system with complaints, and it's very clear now how that happens. The handful of complaints, I look back and can see, okay, our ozone system was down. I have all the records back and forth trying to get that fixed. We do have that fixed, and we had another issue with one of our HVAC systems that we caught very early, but we noticed that was leaking air again. It was inside damper that was closed on it, so it basically just pressurized. We fixed that very quick, but that's why that's good, seeing these complaints, correlating them with the systems.
Yeah, I guess I was just very hopeful that we would see less complaints post September than we had previously. Jim, can you speak to that?
I would say anecdotally, yes. I don't have, like I said, just based on the emails, the number of emails I'm sending to the attorney, there seems to be less complaints.
Mr. Baker?
Thank you. Yes.
There were a number of comments made at the planning board process that there was after those units went in. The goal was to get them in about 6 weeks. They went in about 6 weeks to 9 weeks because they went in at different times, the 3 units. And there was a mention at the planning board by some of the residents that the odor level had gone down quite a bit, with those improvements. Some of the more recent ones were associated with the ozone system. The ozone motherboard fried, and then that's it. It doesn't work till you get a new one. And they said, this is silly. We need a second unit. So that's why they're getting a second unit. So they'll always have one available.
Thank you. And just my last question is, do you have levers in place for what to pull when the dashboard goes red or yellow?
We have, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question exactly. A lever?
What do you do when an odor is detected and you register it in the dashboard as coming back as too strong?
When an odor is detected and we register it in the dashboard. So the dashboard is a manual entering process. So if the system were to go down, that's us notifying the public, hey, ozone system number 1 is down, say offline. We have to manually enter that. But we have to manually enter the complaints too. It's mainly just
Okay, so it's not a leading indicator. It's
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
exactly.
If I could follow up, sorry. It sounded like also the question is, okay, so now that's there, you're aware of it. Do you have a response plan? Odor's been detected at the property line. Do you have a response plan?
Yeah,
What do you
I'll jump
do?
in and ask Mike Lennon to comment also, but that's essentially the root and the spine of the odor management plan. And Kevin Coyne's team, as I was mentioning, they're physically on site, able to respond, do assessment to see if any individual systems are not operating optimally. One of the elements of the odor management plan, again, emphasizing the redundancy, is that it's mandating certain supplies that might be necessary for routine repairs be on site at the facility so that the response time after the identification of a problem, that response time can be greatly reduced. Mike, I don't know if you want to chime in on that as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. Some of the parts now, motherboards is not something you would have in stock, but a lot of the other parts are going to be stocked. And in that new building, that's why we have that odor control sort of HVAC room. Because I know the facility just ordered 350 more pounds of carbon in the past week to make sure that they always have carbon on site. So when they do these rounds, if there's a complaint and they go around and they find that the carbon might be a little bit more old than it should be, it's available right then to change out. That's the most important thing, is having the right tools in place to be able to do it quickly and effectively, and ideally proactively, not responding to complaints, but doing it based on their daily rounds or weekly rounds. This time of year, they're probably not out there when it was -20, but they were out there a couple times that week,
Thank you. Mr. Baker, was that it? All you had for right now? All right, Kevin Davis.
So, as a good computer scientist, I went and started to inspect your reporting log and noticed that everything is actually static. There is no dynamicness to it. I'll be more than happy to give you a lot of feedback about this because that kind of is my job. The other thing is that your dates on the report log are in day, month, year. The United States has a standard of month, day, year. So you want to try to keep that in all goodness. Also, the report log, to have a snapshot of all the failures that are taken on the failure log that's above, because right now you just look at it and I say, oh, there's this there, but was there something offline with the system when the failure log was done? And there's nothing there to correlate the data to the above. So you need some sort of snapshot that's there. The coloring, you're going to want to make sure that the coloring on the website is 508 compliant. There's a perfect person, this person, who is red green deficient, and looking at the online and it's green. That's great. I can't see it. I'm guessing it's green only because I can look on the code that's for the website and see the cut that's colored green. So guess what? It doesn't help. So the fact that you're using a word or something like that is actually really good. I would carry down those online offline things to mean something down in the report log. You might want to open this to the public a little bit and have a CAPTCHA so that way they can make an online report so you guys can take an investigation. So the email again to Mr. Gareffi is helpful, but then you've got a delay when Mr. Gareffi is out in the field and he gets an email. He's not going to be able to email you guys to what's going on right away. So that's there. Something else to think about that is also part of my, sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say, as part of the odor mitigation, the OMP, the odor mitigation plan, we have a 24-hour hotline and an email for. We would like everybody to start.
Put it on the website. You can have a contact section that automatically emails that instead of just having someone to remember what the email is, or just putting the email on there that's highlighted in blue so you can click on it and email it. That would be way cool, awesome. Same thing with the phone number. Make sure that the phone number is in a format so that if you pull up the website, you can like use a mobile device that it actually, when you click on the phone number, it actually dials out appropriately. You're making the website usable besides providing information. I appreciate that.
That's great feedback.
The other thing I also do as part of my job is failure analysis and sparing of systems, like very large government systems. So actually having and doing a failure analysis on your HVAC system to find out what parts are needed and to a sparing level is something that your vendors can do for you. You can have that as part of the system analysis that's done. And I don't know if you've done that or not, but I applaud you for having some parts on spare, but having a complete set of spares on site so that you can remediate some of the issues like the failed board. I agree. The MTBF on a failed board is probably 1,000,000 hours. So the fact that you didn't have one on site is a good thing, but knowing that you have that at a vendor that's 1 day away so that it's there the next day, that you have some sort of reciprocity with your vendors, that is an important thing. So you may not have it on site to do the immediate, but to have the 1 day turnaround so that you can call your vendor and say, hey, I need that part tomorrow. They ship it overnight to you and you've got it and you can put it in the thing and bring it back up. So there's a short time of downtime. I do get that. I understand that because I do stuff. So anyway, those are the comments that I've got. I'm very appreciative of what you did. I also did a Whois search to see where you took it out. It looks like you started this about June of last summer when you actually went and got the website after I had recommended that you put up a status board of some kind. So I do appreciate taking the action when you did last summer. I would also, if you start making it a little bit wider, making sure it looks like it's through Wix, make sure that you have it secured up. No, I don't do this at all. Make sure that you secure something up so that way individuals can use the website for good and not for evil. So you don't have it as being an annoyance.
That's great feedback, Mr. Davis. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll send you my bill.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Gino Fratellone. Any comments, questions?
I concur with Mr. Lyon there. Kevin, he did a good presentation. When they coming back? They're gonna come back another. Don't they say they have to come back again?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, again, there's no approval pending before the Board of Health. This was more informational, and we have had a great exchange. I really appreciate it. The approvals that are pending are before the Planning Board. So that's where we'll be going back to, and that meeting is a week from tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you, sir, for your response. All right, Matt Wason.
Thank you for all the wealth of information. Briefly, Mr. Lannon, if you could pull the presentation back up. I don't think we have that presentation in the packet. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone? Okay, we have to make sure we get that electronically since it was presented during this meeting so that we can
Absolutely.
have it posted appropriately.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, actually, this is exactly what I wanted to look at. So the only question I had was in the existing building, wherever you have a high-speed garage door, you have an air curtain right before it effectively. And in this case, you don't. Is that found not necessary? I know you said that the secure storage is the
Right.
least likely cause of odor.
Yes.
But you've got on those hallways.
And that was us working with the HVAC engineer. And if I can go back to this one, it's really all about how much air they're going to pump into this space from the HVAC unit. You can see there's 60 CFM here for a room that's essentially has no exhaust really. So they're positively pressurizing this space so that it leaks into this room, which then will be treated by the recirculating unit.
You've
That's
created it with the positive pressure there. Okay, I understand that.
Yes. Okay. And there is one over here on the access door.
Yeah, I saw that one, but like I said, it was specifically that garage door that is such a big opening that I saw. That's where you had the air
Right.
conditioning.
And I will bring it back to the HVAC guy to see if he wants to put one here. Is that what you're getting at? Maybe there's another one here.
That it was just my question because, like I said, that would be the point where I would assume you would consider.
Right. In the existing building, the HVAC for that room is its own HVAC, so it's not really that easy to pressurize it because it's just going around in a circle, and that's why there's an air curtain. Where in this case, since it's coming from a centralized system, we can positively pressurize that room.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you can bounce out of that. And then I think my only other question was on odor training for staff. I don't know a lot about that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how scientific is it?
Well, it's scientific. What we do is we present N-butanol concentrated pens to individuals that are going to do the rounds of sampling. First of all, to see if their own sense of smell falls within the normal range. Okay, and then what makes it sort of scientific, as you say, because obviously everybody thinks of it as odor as perception, okay? And people have different strengths of odor. But when you're comparing it to this N-butanol, so we have these jars of N-butanol mixtures, and that was on that list that said 1, 2, 3, 4 on the website. Those concentrations are specific concentrations of N-butanol in water. And N-butanol is used because it's not really a pleasant smelling compound. It's not really an unpleasant smelling compound. So you can kind of take people's interpretation of the smell. You know, it's not flowers and it's not a landfill, for example, right? So you can take that out of it. And then the other thing it does is because people have varying senses of smell, if you have a jar that's a 2, someone with a stronger sense of smell will smell that 2 more, but then they'll smell the odor that's outside stronger. So when you're comparing it to a standard where everybody's smelling the standard and then smelling the environment, you can tell that you can calibrate people with different senses. So from that perspective, it is scientific, but we are using, of course, a subjective tool, which is our nose, to do it.
Cool. Thank you for that. And I think my only other comment was that on the survey forms that you're using, the odor monitoring forms that they're handwriting out, the intensity is 1 to 5, and I appreciate like putting in less than 1, but I saw a lot of like less than 3 and less than 4. So is it a 10-point scale or a 5-point scale? I would just say, it's a
5-point scale.
1 to 5.
Right. So when we say it's less than 4, that means it's greater than 3, but less than 4. That's what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't be that exact, but you can tell it's not this jar. It's more than this jar, but it's less than this jar. So that's why we use that nomenclature.
Got it. All right. And I appreciate you guys are kind of returning to us as a courtesy, as it were. This did stem from complaints to the Board of Health. So that's kind of how it started. So we asked for some follow-up and some steps to be taken. It looks like those have been taken. We do have this on our agenda as a public hearing, so we have to take some action. And I think my question for the board is, should we potentially be making a comment to the planning board or making a recommendation to the planning board out of this group? I think that was Jim's recommendation. So, Mr. Kane, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. I believe we worked our way around the board, so it lands at me anyway. And I think that was probably going to be my piece, is that obviously this is, I have no doubt of the expertise and skill and thoughtfulness of this plan. Certainly having an external consulting HVAC engineer making that recommendation to the planning board would probably be appropriate from the board, from my perspective. Just a second set of eyes, just as we do when we look at a variance request, we try to balance what our goal is, what the regulation is, and what the cost is. And we are always trying to do all that complex math in our head with every decision we make. Every engineer and every business is doing the same thing. I think having a consulting engineer just do a review from a pure public health perspective is probably a good thing, both to allow the Board of Health to meet its requirement to manage noxious odors, which is how the discussion started, last summer, but also as a recommendation to the planning board as they look at the granting the approval for the expansion of the business and the space. Again, we get down to nuts and bolts. I appreciate the question about the air curtain in that garage door. Certainly when that door is closed and having that room positively pressurized, it's going to feed back into the building. With that loading dock space or again, I forget what exactly they called it, but yes, that transportation storage space positively pressurized. As soon as that door goes open, you're pumping, 64 cubic feet per minute of whatever's in that space out that garage door. So again, having another set of eyes might just be a good practice, and certainly something I think hopefully can be supported. I don't think I have any other questions. I think we kind of covered it, that whole, the reporting piece of that we still have odors at the property line, up through December. Again, not a lot, but they still have them there. So it is still an ongoing issue. Hopefully with these upgrades, it's going to resolve a number of those, which we are all in favor of, both as citizens and as a body, I think, because that is, again, noxious odors falls under our purview of management. So taking a quick peek at our audience, I have 3 members in the audience. I have no hands raised at the moment. Does anyone have any last questions, comments, concerns? And does anyone have a motion or an action that the board would like to take? Mr. Baker.
I have a quick question. Are there any new functions that are going to be happening in the new expansion space that don't currently happen in the existing space?
No, Mr. Baker, Peter Durning. No, it's all just providing additional workspace to carry out the same functions that are currently taking place in other rooms within the main building.
And more modern equipment to speed it along, frankly.
And absolutely, there's no canopy or growing, so it's not going to add into that.
Right.
All right. What is the rule of the board? Mr. Baker.
I'd like to make a motion to give the Board of Health's endorsement on this project to the planning board, given a positive peer review on the HVAC system, just to make sure that'll ensure the protection of the public health and the noxious odors.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for a positive endorsement of the plan as presented, and make a recommendation to the planning board for a peer review engineer for the plan. I believe Gino seconded. Did Mr. Davis have any conversation or discussion around the motion?
I would like to have that engineering, the engineering peer review definitely happen if we can figure out a way to swing it, or however we mention that to the planning board or whatever it is, to have that peer review. Yeah, I'm fine with the second. I'm fine with the positive support. But if the positive support may not look so good if the engineer comes back and says there's things that are wrong, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know how we want to juggle that language. But there is, I can say they've definitely made strides in the areas that we've asked them for. I would have liked to have seen a few things on the website, so.
We have a motion and a second. From a procedural perspective, we can vote down the motion and take another action if we choose, or not. We can, again, it's up to us. Simply because there's a motion on the floor regarding this does not mean that it's necessarily the end of conversation. We can vote things down and re-motion and take a different action if we choose. Matt Wason had his hand up for discussion on the motion on the floor.
I agree with Kevin Davis. I feel like if we have a motion that's more along the lines of positive support pursuant to engineering review, then we would be in a better position.
Mr. Chair, I withdraw my motion.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. I'm not sure what Robert would say, but without me flipping open my Robert's rules, we're going to say the motion has been withdrawn, and the chair will entertain any new action the board would like to take.
The motion so moved as spoken by the wonderful Mr. Matt Wason.
Second that.
Okay. So just to make sure we're clear. So the motion presented was favorable pending or consulting engineer peer review and acceptance. All right. So yeah, I believe we have a motion from Matt Wason. We have a second from Kevin Baker. Was that correct? All right. I have so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Usually this would be discussion among the board, but I'm going to let Attorney Durning speak because he really wants to.
Mr. Chairman, I think you could weave into the motion, just specifying the expertise of the consulting engineer, just to anecdotally to let you know that the planning board had taken the odor management plan and wanted a peer review of that and was unable to find or locate a peer review of that. We do believe that they should be able to identify an HVAC consultant more readily. But if you would specify, if the Board of Health would specify in its order what the expertise of the reviewing consulting engineer would be, I think that would help the planning board elect and carry through with that review.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure if we need to make that as part of the motion, or not, if we just make that as an addendum or clarifying comment to our motion. I think that's probably acceptable. Jim, do you have anyone you've worked with outside or suggestions on either individuals or firms who might be qualified, or in general specific? Again, obviously an air quality engineer is a very niche engineering specialty as a credential. So
I guess what I would say is my concern has always been the movement of air through the building. I mean, I've read through the report, the odor management plan, and they certainly seem like they have the pieces together as far as how they operate, how they move stuff, where the odors are presented, the equipment. What I don't know is how many inches, because the report in some areas goes through discussions about how many thick inches of carbon they need to actually. I have no idea, or how many recirculate. And so my thought is that someone who does HVAC should be able to understand how those systems work together. So, and I've talked briefly to a person we deal with at the state when we have border questions, and she didn't have a name of a consultant either that she could provide me. So you're right, it's very niche. So my thought is somebody who understands how that all works and make sure it's going to do the things that they want it to do in the building.
all right, so let's see. Circling back, we have a motion on the floor for a general positive endorsement of the plan pending peer review, appropriate peer review with acceptance. We have a request for a recommendation for what that peer review professional should look like for qualifications. And we've had a second on the floor. So any other discussion around the motion on the floor? And then we can talk about if we want to add just some clarifying language to the planning board from the Board of Health. I don't see any other discussion around the motion. So let's do a roll call vote, and then we can do a quick discussion of what we may want for some clarifying language. So roll call vote, alphabetical. Kevin Baker. You say you were not muted, but I couldn't hear you, but I saw it looks like Kevin Baker votes yes. So thank you, sir. Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratellone.
Gino Fratellone say yes.
Thank you, sir. Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And the chair votes yes. As far as clarifying language, I'm not sure the best way. So qualifications, indoor air quality engineer, HVAC engineer. I'm not sure anybody else have any ideas of kind of just maybe clarifying language to help provide to the planning board as they have the authority at this point on this request. Obviously, if an
So there
odor
are
is there
no-
an ongoing odor issue, then it comes back before us and we're back where we are right now. But
So there are no other engineers in the state of California, Colorado, Oregon, or any of the other bonus states that have similar qualifications. I find that hard.
Wrong coast, Kevin.
as in general, much like healthcare licenses, you generally need to be licensed in the state where you are practicing. So if they're evaluating work here and doing work here, they would need to have a Massachusetts license. So it's a little bit.
I understand, and I also understand the ability to get that license in this state. So I'm just curious. That's all.
Mr. Lannon.
Along the lines of what Peter was saying previously, the planning board tried to find an odor control expert and they couldn't find that, but they didn't try to find an HVAC expert. And I think that is really what you need in this case. And you're right. There are plenty of those. Kevin Davis is right. There are plenty of those out there. So I think if you guys were to recommend that, it's really about the airflow, and as long as the airflow can go through the systems that they do particulate systems all the time. So it's just a particulate with the carbon attached to it. So it's very similar.
Mr. Baker.
What we call it a mechanical plan review? Peer review?
I know that sounds appropriate. What do you guys think?
Yeah, mechanical or MEP.
All right, looking at it, HVAC engineer, indoor air quality engineer, consultant.
I mean, even a big engineering company like a CDM or something like that should be able to find an engineer that has the right thing to do this. That's why I'm kind of like shaking my head going, you can't find a single engineer that does this.
I mean, a very brief search, I found a firm out of Texas actually who hired an air quality engineer in Chelmsford 10 months ago. So it
could have been they were just looking for a very, very specific title, which was hard to find, but a variation on that title qualification may open that group up of what you're looking for. So, all right, we have a motion. We have a second. We will forward a letter. I'm going to ask Jim to forward the recommendation to planning board for us. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Any other conversation, question, concern? Obviously, we wish you luck because this is important to our community, and hopefully we only get to see good things moving forward. We don't need to come back and deal with any other challenges after this is in place, and all will be well. So we're hopeful.
Thank you for your time tonight, and we echo those sentiments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all very, very much. All right, we are way past our time for our next discussion. For 7:30, a discussion around our Title V waiver agreement process. That's from the agenda. It really was looking at, I believe, focusing on that waiver bridge for failed system in properties which are anticipated to be serviced by sewer in the foreseeable future, as we discussed around Stevens Street. So I don't believe we have that language or pieces in our packet, unfortunately. Again, the process, as I remember, is going back, really was identifying, like anything else, either a failed system because it's a failed system, or a property being sold has a Title V inspection that is not in compliance for purchase and sale. And then how do we make sure that we provide adequate public health protection and allow property transfers and systems to go through until that sewer system is in place and they can be connected to it.
So, Mr. Chair, I asked to have that put on. Just I listened to your meeting before, and I just want to make sure that I kind of explained what I thought the process was and offer any opportunity for conversations. In most cases, when we see a Title V failure and somebody's looking for a waiver, it's likely that the system's going to be in the groundwater. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest reasons systems fail. Is in the groundwater. We also see the ones that are surfacing on the ground, and I would say you would handle that differently because that's likely going to be an imminent public health hazard because it may actually go into someone's yard or into the street, and somebody may come into contact with it. So, and again, there may be times. I think I mentioned there was a time where we had a system that was kind of by way of cesspool discharging to a brook, and the board's like, no, you're not going to maintain your cesspool into the brook. They made it put a tight tank in. So the section of the code doesn't even say waiver; it just says you can do these things, and so it gives you broad authority. And so that waiver agreement that you voted on is certainly the mechanism for which you can ask people to do what you think is necessary to do those things. But I just want to clarify: it's often you're going to see a failed system, and it's in the groundwater, and that's why it fails. So. There's systems in the groundwater all over the town. We're dealing with the ones that we're trying to do waivers with, or the ones that get failed when they're doing Title V's. I wasn't sure if anybody else had any questions on the process. I just, like I said, I was listening to the conversation, and I just want to make sure that there's not a lot of guidance. There's just that little section of the code that talks about what you can do. And the rest of it's really at your pleasure and what you think is best for the community.
All right. No, thank you, Jim. Anybody from the board have any questions? Again, I know Kevin had some questions as we were talking about Stephen Street, about both that bridge process in general, and then obviously how we manage any failed system, and mitigate that. So anybody have any questions around the waiver process, particularly for the bridge until septic? All right. Kevin Davis had the biggest smile, but I saw Kevin Baker's hand go up first. So we're going with Kevin Baker because I saw his hand first.
Well, I had thought that we pretty much nailed down our process when we approved the application and the subsequent form that detailed out what people had to do in order to have their application processed.
That's why I was so confused. I was like, I thought we voted on the procedures and the form.
We're done with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I was like, go do the process. I couldn't have said, I guess I could have said it a little more.
Is that what you were trying to say?
Just go do the freaking process.
Oh, you should have said it.
Oh, I will jump in. I think they started to do the process, and the challenge the challenge for them was, again, the shared system. They stopped because our process isn't designed. This was combining, trying to create a new share. It was one owner with two properties next to each other sharing a system. So it wasn't truly a shared system because it was just one owner and two lots next to each other. They were splitting it, basically doing a subdivision, but so they're going to create a new shared system with an old failed or failing cesspool. So they started the process going, septic's coming in. I know you have a process. That's what we want to do. Until they also said, oh, by the way, we also want to create a new shared system between these two properties with different owners. That's when we all shut down because that isn't covered in there. So that piece of, okay, you need an agreement, you need escrow or responsible part, you need all these other pieces before you can really even request a waiver under the bridge program, basically to sewer system, because right now, who owns the system you're trying to bridge to sewer? So I think they did start the process appropriately, and it stopped when they went, well, then who really owns the system? Well, we both do, kinda. Kinda doesn't work.
Well, I think it stopped when they couldn't get both parties to agree to sign the boilerplate agreement that the state had lined up.
Well, when I talked to the attorneys after the meeting where we kind of discovered the shared system component of it, they looked at that section of the code in the shared system, and it mentions about putting a system in compliance with Title V. Well, that's just not possible there. So I think that was also, they kind of like, so what do we do? We can't put a system in compliance. So what do we do? And so again, this is the strangest one I've seen, where the properties are they're so small and they're split and the systems between them.
So then, okay. So the process to do, so we understand the process for a system to get waivered for it. In this case, it's a shared system that needs a waiver. It's still a system. It just happens to be a shared system. So if we had something in place that said, okay, so next time I'll just be a little more forceful, I guess, than nice. If we just had a shared system agreement in place, which sounds like the attorneys are doing, then good to go. And then all they need to do is do the process. And I know we're not intention to do this, but I'm just saying hypothetically what they needed to do is do the process for the waiver of the shared system and just reference the system for the thing, and then it should have been okay. And
I was just say, that sounds right to me, Jim. Does it sound like the process as you would see it?
Like I said,
Agreed. So
I think when we were looking at I think when the deeds came in, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what about this other property? Oh, that's going to be sold separate. It's like, no, that's not allowed. That's a shared system. And that's what kind of spun this thing.
okay. So I'm okay then. I still say they should be following the as proposed and passed process that we have with the waiver system. It just so happens that the system that they're referencing is a shared thingy, and they need to have all the ducks and T's and I's appropriately addressed.
So the shared system agreement talks about, so when you record one of those documents, they call it grant of Title V covenant and easement. In there requires a financial mechanism, and that's what the attorney was kind of talking about, who's paying for it. I think that's probably some kind of legal, like who's responsible, and that financial mechanism should be built into your current waiver agreement. So it covers that fact that it's being shared, and we want to be able to know who's responsible if it is leaking down the street.
So do we need to amend the process that if it's a shared system, or is this the only one that's going to be on the silliness?
I hope it's the only one.
does seem like an oddball. I don't think so. I think the process is still the same.
Yeah.
If you have a failed system that needs a bridge waiver, a bridge process, then you do. Whether that's a shared system for a cul-de-sac, or whether that's a shared system between two properties, or it's just me and my house. So I don't think the process necessarily needs to change. I think it's adequate there. My system has failed and I need a bridge waiver, bridge variance, whatever we're using, or whatever our mitigation plan is in that between time. It's just in this case, that system on paper didn't really exist because it was a shared system that didn't have a shared system agreement. So it was, yeah, the system physically existed, but as an entity, as a legal entity, it didn't. So,
Right. So now
I don't think our process changes. I think our process is fine. It just needed to bounce back to make sure that the two parties responsible for the system had figured out how they're handling it. So then they, as a body, that shared agreement as a body, can go, we would like this request of Title V variance until sewer comes in. So yeah, I don't necessarily think we need to change our process, because even if it did come up again, I think it just comes back to, okay, who is the responsible party for this system that is in failure? Okay, make the request, go through the process, the same as anything else.
You've had some familiarity with it now, so now you know that in addition to the regular waiver process, you need to add in there the financial assurance mechanism and the legal ownership mechanism, because there's two parties or however many parties involved.
All right, no, thank you, Jim.
Okay,
Any other,
so
Matt?
one last one, another waiver situation that's something I haven't seen before. So,
what unicorn is it? Yeah, is it?
So this one, and I've talked to DEP a little bit on it. I'm waiting to hear back from them. The section, according to DEP, gives you broad deference. It's like, yeah, I want a little bit more than that. So Northern Bank wants to. They bought a bunch of property going up on Great Road in Robinson, and they want to put a new bank building on the property. They're going to tear the other buildings down, put a new bank property on there. They want to use the existing septic system that's there for the sub shop to be able to build the new building until they connect to sewer. Typically with waivers, yeah, there you go. Typically with waivers, you don't necessarily allow new construction on a waiver. But what they want to do is tie a very low flow of office building into the system that's there, that's currently for the sub shop. So it's designed for 1,000 gallons a day, has a treatment tank on it. I think it passed Title V. I can go back and check that. And I went, I got to ask that question. I don't know. So that's what they'd like to do. I have the question at DEP to kind of get some guidance. Again, it's a very small section in Title V that talks about this process. So,
What does it say in Title V that we're supposed to do?
it says it allows you to grant waivers to properties. It doesn't really speak to what if the property is going to be reconstructed. So then you go and kind of look back at other properties. Typically, if somebody come and said, "Hey, I want to build a new building on this lot," we'd say, "All right, you need a well, you need a septic system, you need in compliance with the existing codes." We know this section's getting sewer. I'm pretty sure that they have agreements to tie into sewer Northern Bank. What they're looking to do is pull a building permit, and who knows, the building may not be built until they can tie into sewer. It's a couple of years away, but they're looking to be able to do that. With the idea is they could tie on to this existing sewage disposal system that would have more capacity than that bank building needs anyway, and has treatment tanks. So I think it's going to jet or fast as part of the system. That currently serves a sub shop, which won't be there anymore because they're going to take those buildings down and put the bank down.
So the Willow Bookstore and the sub shop are coming down?
That's my understanding.
A subway.
Subway there, yeah.
Not the Littleton sub shop, the subway.
Subway. I'm sorry.
So over all those properties that are fenced off, so they're going to get rid of the barber shop, the subway, and tie that all in, and they're going to dig up the storage gasoline tanks that were at the golf station. And
I am assuming that's going to be all part of that work if it hasn't been done already.
Jim, if I could.
Yep.
A lot of work.
So, sewer project totally aside,
Yep.
if the bank came to us and said, we want to build a new bank on top, can we use that existing system? Would they be allowed to?
If it fits.
No.
And
That wasn't a very definitive no.
No. So because this is a weird system about if they had let's say they went down off of Goldsmith Street, found a lot and said, "Hey, we want to build a new bank building on there." At a minimum, you would want them to show you that you had a potable water supply so they could tie into town water. That's not a problem. And a design for a sewage disposal system. So they'd have to have a permit for the sewage disposal system. That the reason for the kind of no is that there is a sewage disposal system permit for that system. It's not for that, and it was put in as an upgrade. So I think there were some variances granted, but all reasonable because it's a high water table there, but it's got the bells and whistles to allow that restaurant to have that. That's a big flow for that section of town.
Right. That's why I feel like if a building is going to come in and say, instead of tearing all that out and putting in a completely different, smaller system, if they brought that to this board and said this system would be totally compliant with what we're building, does Title V allow you to say, well, then yes, you can repurpose that system?
So, to your point, if it was completely compliant, and I think, like I said, there's some variances there. That scenario is kind of hedging just a bit. If it was completely compliant, let's say they tore a building down, because we do this with people who burn when the house burns down. The code kind of accepts the fact that, hey, you had a 4-bedroom house there. We don't care how old the system is. You're going to put another 4-bedroom house and you haven't changed the flow. This is just a little weirdo. Is it changing the flow a little bit? In this case, the flow is going less. I don't, from my public health perspective, I don't really see an issue with it. I'm just trying to tie it into how it gets approved because I haven't seen it before.
So they're looking to do a waiver. Sorry, Mr. Baker, go ahead. You raised your hand. I was being rude and didn't raise my hand.
I just think they need to follow the process.
Yeah, no, I'm bringing it to you because it's a weirdo thing I haven't seen.
Another unicorn.
They just need to follow the
No,
process.
that's why I was asking, because I think the same as the shared system one, it is, there's no problem with the waiver process.
Yep.
It wasn't set up before that.
Yep.
So if that ever comes up again, our answer should be, Jim, why are we even talking about this in a meeting? Right, because the first answer is get the shared system established and then come to us with a real system. That's why I'm asking about this bank one, because if separate from the waiver process, we determine that the system is okay for them to use, then the waiver is moot unless there's actually a problem with the system.
Right. And again, I think it passed the Title V. I think that was in the bank's letter. The only thing is it's not fully, it wasn't fully compliant at the time because you couldn't do that because of the area of town. So it either got a groundwater reduction offset for the leach field. I think that's probably what it was. But again, it's got treatment ahead of it. It's oversized for what the bank would need. So as long as you're okay with that, I'm just going to wait to hear what DEP says. And right now, the kind of off the cuff was, hey, the board can do what they think's appropriate there. And again,
So-
part of the question here is there's not a lot of direction in that waiver process.
And I think I would treat it as forget the waiver. Just if that's
Okay.
what they want to use. If there's a problem with the system and then they're trying to say we need a bridge, that's the waiver process. But if they're saying, will you allow us to repurpose this existing system provided we can review all the variances, review the inspection, etc. But if I think this board feels like, man, the system's fine for you, then I would be okay with that. But
Okay.
let's approach it that way. Ignore waiver for now.
Okay. I'm good with that. I just wanted to bring it to you because it's, again, a different situation.
Not per the process, it's not a failing system.
I don't
And even
believe so.
if they went and did the analysis, what you're telling us, Jim, is that it would still be a valid system with a lower flow of water and it would still pass Title V, then it's not a failing system. You can't enter the waiver. It's like, if failing system, little diamond, and it says, yes, go do these steps. If it's no, exit.
No, it's more the kind of other parts of the code when you're building something new. Typically, the code wants you to have a fully compliant system. So this is the kind of weirdo thing, but they're going to ultimately tie into sewer. So it's a stopgap to get them probably mostly a building permit so they can start building the building. I would expect that they'd be using that system probably for a short period of time, just based on construction schedules, but who knows?
And did the sewer system go down that part of 119?
I believe they're getting,
Hold on. I'm going to go pull up this Littleton. Let me go do that real quick.
okay.
Because I don't recall the yellow boxes going down the street that far.
So that would be the corner of Robinson Road and Great Road.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just pulling up the sewer expansion website. One moment, please. Please hold.
While you do that, that feeds into the question I actually had about our waiver process is, do we have a piece in there? So what happens when the sewer plan changes? And we've granted a waiver to a property that all of a sudden is not going to be able to access the sewer project for any sort of reason because of the change of planning, and something happens, I guess. We've already had one resident who was misinformed about that they would get to have it. That obviously wasn't on a plan, but there's also been discussion, I know, around further development in town, and we don't control where the sewer is going to go. So if a decision at some point is made that turns left instead of right, and some properties are no longer going to be connected, one, I don't think we're necessarily well informed about that unless Kevin Davis looks at this report regularly. And two, what in that waiver process should we then, because that should be a signal to us, not necessarily to cancel the waiver, because if it changes one day, that means it could change another day. But are we stuck waiting for the 24 months or whatnot? Or is there something that we should be coming back to say, oh dear, we granted you a waiver, but it now looks like you're unlikely to get that?
So the other thing I could suggest is that maybe you have the applicants get a letter from Water Sewer saying they have rights to enter the sewer system. That way there, you know that they've talked to them and they have access. I'd hate to think that would change. That would be a really bad thing.
I actually like that approach because I'm looking, you said is at the corner of Robin Road and what else?
Robinson and Great Road.
Okay, so the sewer is going down, like, can I share? Yeah, hold on one sec. Let me see if I can do this. Sorry, guys. Can everybody see the prints that I have? So this is right off of the Littleton sewer page, and these are the prints from Camp Dresser McKee CDM. Hence the reason why I said, does CDM have this? And you can see here's Robbins Road and here's Great Road. And the gray is actually the sewer line that's kind of going in. So, yeah.
So you can see where it says 287 about the middle of your screen. Yep, right there. That's the system they want to use. It's up behind 277. It goes up about where that rectangle is. That's where the leach field is, almost perfectly. So I think
Right.
the idea was to build the building somewhere near the point of the roads and then tie into that system that would be in that location. But it looks like it's on the sewer plan.
Right. So that's all right. So I'm going to stop sharing screen since everybody. Now, how do I do that? Thank you. Don't use Zoom that much. Anyway, but that's where I was getting my information from, was right off their website, and that's the plan in print. So
Did you want to maybe modify your process just to require the Title V inspection, a copy of a letter from Water Sewer, that they have rights to, that they can tie into the sewer system when it's available, just to, okay.
We do that. I mean, I wish that they maintained a list of exact addresses, you know, on a web page, so you don't have to look at a drawing to try to interpret it. You'd be able to go and say, "This is my address. There it is. Green light. I'm listed."
what would be even better would be if they had a thing that you could either put in the property number, like off of the tax page or whatever, or the property address on the website, and would either give you a green check or a red X. Sorry.
But it should also say the word green and say the word red.
And that would be 508 compliant.
That's right.
Hey, that's a thing. You trust me.
I'm sure.
It's a thing. All right. Anyway, I'll be quiet now.
I think kind of Matt was asking the whole, okay, so they get the letter, it goes through, everything's great, and now we're 12 months into this however long window, and sewer has said, oh, well, actually, because money ran out, grant funding got cut, cherry sheets changed, or the far end commercial, the capacity, the far end commercial property that was going to be 500 units, we got the planning board to agree to 800 units, so now that capacity that was going to go down Great Road all the way to wherever, suddenly, you know what, we probably can't do that right now in this phase because capacity isn't there. So we're going to have to cut off these 7 streets and these 58 addresses from being able to connect. I'm not saying any of this would happen, but whatever reason, something changes. So they hit bedrock and they can't put the line in. Who knows? How do we monitor or make aware that, okay, that 18 months is now indefinite? Who knows when that system is going to come down your street? How do we as a board respond to a poor resident who, yep, I've been really good, I've been following all the rules, I've been pumping every 2 months for the last 18, and now I find out that nope, because of pick any of a dozen reasons, it's not coming up my street anymore. How does a resident respond? How do we respond to that resident who now has to either, I mean, if we have a timeline for an extension, then that's easier discussion. But if it's an indefinite, we never know, we don't know when, if it'll ever happen. Does that now come back before us as a, you know what, we need to end your waiver? You know, I'm not sure if our waivers are timed or not, but you know, your waiver is basically expired. It was time limited until you connected, but that really is no longer an option in the foreseeable, manageable future. Now you're back to having a failed system, and okay, what's the mitigation? Is this whatever new system, however that works? I just don't know how we follow up on that. I mean, obviously we should, Jim's office and our office in town hall should have a list of these waivers that we should be able to pull out. Who is on this kind of bridge waiver septic sewer system thing, and if the system changes, then we can identify if it impacts any of our petitioners. I think that's probably the only way, because I unless either a resident is notified and he comes forward saying, what do I do? Okay, let's try to figure out what you do. If they're notified and don't take an action coming before us, how do we make sure that we can manage that so it's not 20 years that we've had some poor person pumping every 2 months for years and years and years? Mr. Baker.
I think case in point is we granted the ability for the new construction down next to Town Hall, just to the left of Town Hall. We granted them the ability to put a tight tank in until a sewer connection was available. Was that deadline to connect? Was it last June?
It's connected now.
It's connected to sewer.
Yep.
Okay.
So there was a tight tank put in the back there, and that tight tank served as kind of the pump station, if you will, to pump it over to the current system that's serving the center of town.
Thank you. I didn't know it was connected.
Yep. I didn't either until the building inspector asked me. They were looking for occupancy, and so I called the engineer, and he said, "Nope, it's all been connected." So
That's a good point. We put a deadline on that, right?
Yeah.
When we approved that, we said, but we revisit by this date, correct?
It was like a June deadline. It was plenty of time.
Yeah.
and the good thing about that is that they needed an occupancy permit, and the building commissioner is good about asking that question. So
Awesome. So I don't know
yeah,
the
we
answer to
probably
your
wanna-
question, Mr. Chair, but when faced with such a dilemma, I'm sure we'd figure it out. But it's good to ask those questions.
I'm sure we would as well. So, so in that case, luckily the building commissioner asked, hey, occupancy permit, did it happen? I would love to see a somewhat more formal process somehow in there that we have that big list of running deadlines. Okay, this property has a deadline to accomplish this task by this date. Hey, we're coming up on that. How you doing with that? Where are you? What's your status? From kind of a systems perspective, it would be kind of nice to going all those time limited pieces that are out there that we actually follow up on them. Oh, nope, we've connected to the system. All is well. Everything's great. Wonderful.
So-
Take it. Wipe it off the whiteboard. Everybody's happy. Or, oh, yeah, well, we haven't done that. And theoretically, the system has been, not certified, not within the variance for months or years because we forgot to follow up on that deadline.
So, Dan, one of the other things that towns have done with waivers is they need to connect. They need to get an entrance permit from the sewer department, and Title V requires that their existing system be abandoned in accordance with Title V. And typically that means pumping out whatever's there. If it's a tank, crushing the bottom of it, filling with soil so it doesn't become a cavity. If it's a cesspool, filling the thing in, and usually somebody needs to inspect that. So in the case of Lunenburg, what they did was they essentially made the person who does the sewer inspection an agent of the board. So at the time they were doing the sewer line inspections, they could also inspect, making sure the old system was decommissioned in accordance with the code, and then providing some documentation to the board after that. So that might be a mechanism to do some of that. One of the questions, and I guess maybe I talked to water and sewer. I'd like to think that for the most part, if they told you could enter the system, you could, because there'll be two deadlines, right? There'll be the deadline, the sewer department has to get the lines in and connected, and that may be a phase thing, right? If they get the plant built and they get the trunk online, maybe they can start feeding it. So as neighborhoods are connected or powered up or the lines are checked or whatever they do, this neighborhood now can connect. And then it's one of these things, maybe we can get reports from the sewer department saying, hey, this street's live now. And then we could go through and look at all the waivers and say, all right, you guys have X amount of time to get this thing connected.
Or maybe it's as simple as our chair asks them to be notified immediately if there are any changes to the properties that are planned, right? Like maybe that's it. Just say, we might have people depending on this. So if you change your plans, you need to inform us, please.
Yeah.
All right, making a quick note. I apologize. All right, I'll see how we can maybe reach out to them and ask them for any changes in the scope. Notify the board Okay, any further discussion around our Title V waiver agreement process?
I do like the applicant getting the letter from the sewer department. I think we should add that in.
Yeah, no, I do as well. That really is a operating procedure. I'm not sure, is it falling under a regulation, or is it just falling under an application procedure? Does it need to be a board action, or can we just simply add this administratively as a additional form? I don't know. I'm asking the question because I'm simply not sure if we codified it in regulation of what needed to be included, or if this is simply a board procedure and just that's one required.
I think I would like to have a public hearing come up where we add that letter from the sewer commission or whomever, because if someone says, well, you didn't have it as part of the requirement, so I don't need to get it, then you're going to have this thing like, well, we like it, but you don't have, so if we just have it there that we required it black and white, it's there.
General agreement? All right. Brenda, I know you're still hiding in the background, typing and scribbling furiously in the background. If you wouldn't mind adding a public hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting for the Title V waiver agreement, and with a specific of adding documentation from water and sewer of availability or anticipated availability of sewer at that address. Mr. Baker.
Okay, sure thing.
If it would be easy, maybe we can just take our current process and just add one line item in there, applicant to provide copy of signed agreement with sewer department for future connection. And then present that in the packet, and then we can vote in it.
We should probably also find out if that's even a thing yet.
I can check with that.
Yeah, if water and sewer is actually even
it kind of better be
providing those yet.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Kevin. I think it should be, but I'm not saying not to. I'm saying we just need to find out what it is.
All right. Any further discussion around Title V waivers tonight? No. Okay. And we will have more time at our next one as we look at adding that to our application process. Just FYI, it is now 9:20 for everybody. We have a 7:40 discussion regarding our Board of Health regulations or proposed regulation discussion for private wells.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Of course, Mr. Baker.
I did hear back from Will Pickard, the chair of the Agricultural Commission, and they're getting in touch with Mike Botello at the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources under the Food Safety Modernization Act. MDAR governs irrigation well testing, and he's going to wait to hear back to confirm that the proposed regulations are consistent with the state regulations. So once we hear back from them, we'll have sort of the AgCom conversation. And I have not heard back from Mr. Gerbig or Mr. Chobot for my request to have them comment on the document itself in the OneDrive, and I will send that request to them again in hopes that they can get back to us prior to our first February meeting. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to continue.
I have a motion to continue.
Second.
I have a second.
Some discussion.
Roll call. Any discussion?
Nope.
Seeing none. Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Baker.
No, I'm saying it's a discussion, not a public hearing.
Oh,
It is a discussion. You're right.
cool. Done.
Continue the discussion. All right. Give me one moment, folks. I apologize. It's 30. Sorry, I'm back. That time of night. Good night, children. All right, so we continued our discussion around private wells, waiting for AgCom to come back with Mass Ag's recommendations and review of the proposals and some feedback from some of our residents who've expressed interest in sharing. So that puts us at 7:50, our ID decision support tool. Dr. Wason, whenever you're
All
ready,
right.
sir.
JN1 is our current predominant variant of COVID Omicron. It's at close to 50%. HV1 is its predecessor, so it is decreasing in count. I don't have a lot of updates. As I said last time, I'm going to get some better data on the case count, so it looks like it'll be weekly. I have to make sure I can get it historically pretty well. But for example, over the past week, Littleton had 8 confirmed cases. Confirmation becomes a test of, well, it must be people that have gone into a healthcare office and been formally tested. That's the only way we're going to get those numbers. Vaccination numbers are still, I mean, they creep up a little bit, but we're still below 30% who have of residents who have been vaccinated for COVID this season. Wastewater numbers are still both up above 1,000 for the north and south that kind of feed communities to our east. The influenza rating at the state has gone from high down to moderate, so starting to see a slight drop in cases. Our vaccination rate similarly has just bumped up a hair. It's still just under 50%. So season is hopefully starting to tail down, but kind of maybe disappointing that we didn't even get 50% vaccination for our community, because that can just be so protective of that. And then RSV, lastly, this chart doesn't date a whole lot, but it looks like we're over the hump. You anticipate this is going to keep sliding down. I left it as kind of a high risk because it is still out there. There are still a lot of respiratory viruses going out. Still seeing strep cases pop in. So lots of illnesses still bounce around. I'm sure they're in the schools as well. So don't be surprised if you catch one of these. But hopefully get your vaccinations. It helps avoid the big ones. And that's what I got for that week.
As always, thank you, sir. So I know that for the week ending January 13th, which I think is the most recent statewide data, there were 43, almost 4,400 new cases and 40 deaths attributed to COVID using the COVID death criteria. So I think the death number for that week is actually up quite a bit from where it's been. We've been running teens and 20s for quite a while, so that 40 number is a little bit higher than I think we've seen in a bit. But case number also at 4,400, I think is up a little bit from where we've been. So it's still out there, folks. Any comments, questions?
Well, to reinforce that, if that's 40 deaths in a 1 week period.
Yep.
So influenza has 57 deaths for the season. So COVID is still bad.
Trying to kill us. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any questions or anything for Matt about our decision support tool? As always, thank you so much for pulling all that data into one place for us. It's so much easier than for all of us out there. So we appreciate your expertise sharing that with us. All right, we are at administrative matters. I take 1 second. I have a hand up in the audience. I'm going to promote Rita Biagioni. Please forgive me if I mispronounced that.
Yeah, Joni. You got it right.
All right, Ms. Biagioni, you are with the Board of Health. You're on mute, ma'am.
There we go. I've been on the call waiting to hear about the discussion on stable permits, and it looks like we just skipped over that.
No, it's under administrative matters, which is where we're actually getting to right this minute.
Okay, because I thought you guys had just gone over the COVID numbers, which looked like it was after that on the agenda. So, okay. I must be looking at a misordered agenda. Thank you.
Nope, sorry about that. Nope, we are at administrative matters. We're going to go through some sets of minutes. But actually, we're going to hold off a minute. If it please the board, I'm going to exercise chair privilege, and we're going to jump through our administrative matters to line 3 and discuss stable permits, if that's okay with everybody. So, stable permits. I do know we have, let's get my pages here. Separate tab. I apologize. See, this is what happens. I'm going out of order. So, oh yeah, we can do that, but I'm not quite ready to do that yet. I'm working on it. So, in our last meeting, as I'm trying to do 2 things at once, we talked about the stable permit process. I believe we had 6 requests off the top of my head as I'm put up for stable permits. And we were going to have a discussion of if we were okay with having the chair sign on behalf of the board as long as the permits had been approved in principle by animal control officer as the animal production officer of record, and Jim Greffey as the health agent of record, since it's a kind of a shared responsibility for stable permits. All right, Brenda, I'm sorry. I know you sent the Sable stuff, and I'm trying to pull the Sable stuff up, and I have 1 permit up as a PDF, and I know you had shared a Word document. Hold on. There we go.
The Word document doesn't have anything in it either.
Word document has the
It
Sable
has
licenses.
screenshots of
Yeah, it does.
the online system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but-
I'm going to share
Oh, there it is.
that. Yeah, I'm going to share that one. I apologize. I knew I'd seen it, and it was in a Word document, which I was not expecting off the top of my head. So I apologize. So we're going to share that one up. Let me know if everybody can see. It looks like our list of 5 stables here in town. Just double checking. So we have a color code system, but I'm just not sure if it's actually
Okay,
pending. I'm
yeah.
going to defer to Brenda as the person
Yeah.
who's put together this awesome project to explain what she has shared.
Okay, what this list is showing is actually the renewal list of those who have applied for a stable permit, paid for their stable permits. And I'm sorry that it's not larger. So currently there are 5 stables who applied for a permit, paid for their permit, approved by our health agent. And there are more in town that have not. This is actually showing you the list of stable licenses who will be renewed automatically. So this is just a current list of who has a current stable permit. And this was set up so you can see the dates depending of the notice when the permits expire. And then if they're pending, so the first notice will go out a year. So December 14th, 2024, their first notice to say, hey, your stable permit is ready for renewal. And then it will have a second, third, and of course, the 4th and final notice. But there are others that need to apply for their permit.
These are the only ones we currently have on record
Right.
that are active. Do we have any expireds that we know of? So I'm just trying to figure out how to identify folks who may still have stables, but either a permit has expired and they didn't renew, but are still maintaining stable.
I'm sorry, I actually did not attach that Excel spreadsheet because what I've done is gone through the current lists. Well, I shouldn't say the list previously, and literally called them, Googled their information. Unfortunately, the application process that was in by hand had no contact information, no email, and no phone number. So what I've done is I've had to actually contact them. Each and every one of them. I've sent emails, And I've also called them and left messages to remind them that, they need to renew their stable permit. These are the only ones that responded. So the next thing will be to send them each a letter to say that they need to renew their permit. And then the application that was done by hand, that application, if you see in the packet, I think it might be there. Sorry. Yeah, this is just this shows you how you would apply online. And then of course, there's actually the permit, a screenshot of the permit that they would get once it's been reviewed and Jim's gone out to see their manure management plan and it's approved. Then they would print out their permit from Viewpoint. But the application is online. They pay their fees online. And I can't show you an actual online application because I would have to actually go in and do a mock. I would have to pretend I was, someone applying for a stable permit. So what I did was just give you the screenshots of the licenses that we have currently, the permit, and that actually is the older permit application that we went online. So we put all of this online. So when they go to apply, and of course it does have an email address, it does ask, do they have other animals? They have to list all their other animals as well.
Did we expand the stable permit to include other animals like, donkeys, cattle, goats?
Yeah, it says other animals and they have to click it saying yes or no. And then they have to write down, there's a checkbox where they say yes or no. And then they would have to add whatever animals they have. In addition.
Yeah, I understand. Sometimes it's good to have, I'm not saying we did something wrong. I'm just saying the number of animals on the property might be one of those things where if you have a list of animals, it might be jog the brain of people to say, oh, I need to report my poultry, because that's also an animal that if you have a coop, you're kind of have a stable. It's a housing for an animal. Anyway.
Matt Wason.
This is where I've struggled with some of the definition is what is a stable? I couldn't find anything at the state level, which is the first page of this Word document. Is all I could really find, and it just says, right, use a stable for any building in a city, period. But what is there a legal definition of a stable that we can use? Like if I have 3 chickens that live in a part of my shed, does that count or not? Jim,
Jim, do you want to intervene here? I think you're on mute.
I guess what I would recommend doing, farm kind of questions always kind of throw me, particularly with definitions. So what I would do is talk to probably Mike Cahill at the Department of Agricultural Resources and say, hey, what's a reasonable definition for this? The general law allows boards to make regulations. That's the other way to kind of quantify that if you wanted to say, hey, this is what we consider a stable. So I don't have a good answer for you because given Davis and I had this conversation, it's like I've generally considered it, a place for horses and cows and large animals. I never really thought about chickens and coops as stables, but I guess they're housing for animals. So where do you draw that line?
And then my other piece is if you search E-code E360 for Littleton, it comes up with a fee. It comes with a $5 fee for a stable inspection. That's an annual inspection, but not a $25 permit fee. Are those duplicates? Mismatch? Is the 25 going to Neshoba?
Nope, the 25 goes to you. Your old permit fee used to be $5, and the board changed it, I think, well before COVID, because they said, hey, wait a minute, $5 doesn't pay to process the paperwork. So they changed it to 25. The only thing I'm wondering is if there's a fee for the animal inspector. So I don't know if you remember, there's 2 positions. There's the animal control officer and animal inspector. The animal inspector is nominated by the board, appointed by the state, Mike Cahill's office. And so I don't know if that's a fee that gets paid for inspection when she does like animal inspections, what they call the barn book.
I guess we
I can
gotta check,
check.
because like I said, if I search E-code 360 for Littleton for stable, the
Yeah.
only thing that comes up is 211A, which is referenced on our webpage now, and it
Okay.
says a $5 inspection fee.
Okay.
So
Yep.
we've got to get this formalized and documented.
All right. Ms. Biagioni, thank you so much for being patient and being here. What would you like to share? We always are welcome to hear input about anything we do.
No, all good. I'm from back in the day when it was all filed like on paper, and I would mail my little check-in with my form and my manure management plan. So I'm grateful it's online. So Brenda, you'll be seeing mine come through. But when I saw it as an agenda item, I didn't know if you guys were changing the process on how stable permits were issued and reviewed. So thank you for allowing me to ask some questions, and I appreciate you moving it up on the agenda.
No problem. I'm sorry our meeting went long today and you had to wait so long. No, this was actually literally okay, we have a permit. Do we all have to sign? Can one of us sign on behalf of the board? This was really a pure operational discussion of, because we are a body of peers. So rather than having us all go into the office and sign every single piece of paper or doing it electronically and emailing them out, this is really just a process question. But obviously, every time we do this, we identify new things as we're always learning and growing, that our regulations aren't as clear as they should be. Our documentation isn't as clear as it could be. And we still have yet to find a solid definition other than Merriam-Webster's of what is a stable. So
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
thank you, man. We appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank
All right. So we've identified some homework. I in fact just pulled up because obviously the Mass General laws are often very good, sometimes too good about definitions. At the beginning of many sections, they'll have a definition of every term. I just popped up the MGL and put in stable. I got 2 references to that. Yep, we can license them, and that we can charge a fee for licensing them. And that's I don't see that first page of every section with the whole list of definitions of everything.
Agreed.
So
Marion,
again, I'm doing this on the fly as we're doing other things, so I can dig deeper once we're offline. But
Merriam-Webster, a building in which domestic animals are sheltered and fed.
so that gets us everything from guinea pigs to elephants.
So if you call your child's room a pigsty, you have to pay $25.
And you have to bring in Jim and the animal control officer to inspect it and have a manure management plan.
I'm not going to comment on my children, but it might be effective.
So that's why I suggested talking to MDAR just to get whenever you're dealing with farming kind of things, you always want to kind of go down the middle and do kind of what makes sense.
I'll take a stab at calling the Agriculture Commission and see what their definition is, so that way we can move this forward.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Okay, where are we? So we're still in administrative matters. We've looked at we still haven't answered the question of how do we
Mr.
want to
Chair.
sign these things?
Right.
Yes, Brenda.
Thank
I said,
you.
we still haven't addressed the original question of how do we want to handle this? Do we want to? I'm happy to go in and sign as long as it's the pleasure of the board to say that's okay. Again, I don't know how many we're going to have, but it's not like we have 1,000. And then just scan and we can email them out to the
Well, they
applicants.
get printed from Viewpoint, Mr. Chair. So, once it's approved in the system, as soon as it's approved, the permit pops up and they print it. So it's not like I don't print them out. They print them on their end. So my question to you was, as of now, I think if you read it, it just says Board of Health, Littleton Board of Health. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a signature. So do we want to keep it as just, approved by the Littleton Board of Health? Or do you want a signature on there that we can add to the card? I know on our building permits, we have the building inspector and, I'm not on our building permits, on our annual inspection certificates. We have electronic signature from Sean Carlin from Fire Department and Mike Kenny, the building inspector. And they just print them out on their end. So it's up, it's there. Once it's approved, it's gone through every single process. So there doesn't need to be any other approval. And I just think it would make it much easier for everyone. Because if they need it for something and we have it printed and we're waiting for signatures and they don't get it, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Before you hop in, I know Kevin had your hand up. Kevin Baker had your hand up. Anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say we could just streamline the process and import an electronic signature image from our health agent and have that on the document so that when he approves it, the form gets generated and the folks can just print it out at home as soon as they go through the process. Just like all the other departments.
Then Matt Wason?
I was going to say the same thing. How are we signing every other restaurant permit and all that kind of thing?
They're not electronic yet.
So the septic system permits I sign, the food service permits say the Littleton Board of Health on it. So that's how those documents are taken care of.
I guess, but yeah,
I sign.
I don't care as much about the honestly what's on the piece of paper at the end. It's more about who's saying yes, it is now valid to be signed.
In that case,
who is? Yeah, you're clicking the button in the computer.
That's right. So if it's food service, your Bridget goes through and reviews all that stuff and make sure it's okay. If it's a septic system permit, if there's no variances, I do that. If there's a variance, I wait until the board's acted on it before I do that, so that all those pieces are in place.
So what is it for stables?
So generally it's been, do they have a manure management plan? Go out and take a look at the site.
Okay.
If things seem reasonable, I just initial the application, and that's in the past, that's what's happened.
Then I would say, and if we can, let's just mirror that same, since that's the same as how septic permits go, let's just mirror that same process. Because I unless the board sees those, I don't see any reason why this board should be signing a stable permit.
Okay, on the previous stable licenses that I'm looking at, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has Gino signature, not signature, named. It says Littleton Board of Health signed, then it has 5 names on this. So this is prior to me coming to Town of Littleton. So, but as Jim said, once he clicks that, he approves that. And I agree with Kevin and yourself, Matt, that if the health agent has a signature there and it's approved, I think it'll be fine.
I think it's fine having our names, but Jim has approved it on behalf of the board because that's what he's
Yes,
our health
because he's
agent.
the health agent, absolutely. And
I don't think it then needs one of us to do any special signature or extra step.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure we need to put our names on there necessarily, because if for no other reason, then it's just one more thing that has to get changed.
Right.
Every May.
I agree. Yeah.
Why add more work into? Oh, I forgot. It's July. I forgot to go back and change all these things. So now I've put all these things out there with 2 board members who aren't here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, you know what? If we're putting everything else out, we're putting other permits out there with simply, it's been electronically approved in the system, and that's trackable, and it's issued by the Littleton Board of Health. I mean, as the one I'm looking at, in the PDF that we have for Harmony, I'm kind of okay without having necessarily either a facsimile signature or wet ink signature on it. I have a nursing license that doesn't have a signature on it. It just automatically generated out of the system. So I'm not sure, I don't know about license to practice medicine, but my nursing card doesn't have, I actually don't even get a nursing card anymore. You have to go to the website and just get a printout that, yep, you're a nurse. So I'm not sure we need to be more aggressive than that for, I'm not saying a nurse is any better or worse than a stable is, but if I can have a nursing license without a card, I'm not sure we necessarily have to have names and signatures on a stable permit.
By the by, I was doing a little searching, and it said there's a press release from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. Highly pathogenic avian influenza detected in Massachusetts. Granted, it's in Barnstable, but it's there, and it was in a non-commercial backyard population. So, chickens included. It's
So does this mean we have to direct our animal inspector and health agent to go inspect every chicken in town?
so I'm
That was a joke, Jim. I'm not going to do that to you.
No, I guess what I would say is, some towns have, like Town of Air has regulations on keeping chickens. Because, and it's more, and I have conversations with people in Littleton from time to time when they're moving in. They're asking about, are there regulations on animals? And normally the conversation I have is around nuisance, situations. I don't know that they have any regulations, but what they do have is, if you're creating a nuisance, an odor, a noise, flies, manure, runoff, yeah, that's a problem. So if you're being responsible, they don't have any regulations. But to answer some of these questions, maybe you wanted to have cursory regulations. I don't.
I mean, it's more for the way I look at it. It's more for handling manure, which can be a problem, right? That's problem number one. Chicken manure is some of the highest manure issue out there because it has a very high nitrogen content and load and things like that. So it's one of those things that you really have to kind of pay attention to. But it's also to know where those population of those animals are, so that if something does happen in one flock of animals, like in this case chickens that we're talking about, right? If it happens in one place because they got in touch with waterfowl, which we do have waterfowl migrate through our area and with our lakes, it's a thing, so it's more of a way of keeping track of where things are and knowing that if it enters the population somewhere, that then you have to start to notify, hey, you guys got to be on alert because ... I think that's more of what it is. It's those two things. Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
Always appreciate the discussion, and yet, we're definitely things that we need to keep our eyes open. It's easy to miss until it's here. So, all right. We have 3 other items on our administrative matters. We've got COVID test kit expiration dates, health
Mr. Chair?
position, and our yes.
Did we have a clear answer on that?
We were just reviewing what's left on our administrative matters.
No,
we
to
can
this
jump
table
into that
permit
one right now.
signature. We're just,
We're just gonna as is. It let the system. It's been electronically approved by Jim as the final one after in consultation with the animal inspector. That I think we're just leaving it as
That
is.
says the
just
Board of
simply
Health?
Littleton Board of Health.
okay,
Is
thank
that
you so much. Appreciate that.
I mean, is that everyone on board with that? Is acceptable? All right. COVID test expiration dates. We have a large number of kits still in our storage and town hall. Brenda, it sounds like thank you very much for having looked at the dates on the boxes which have expired, but then also gone back and double checked with the FDA extended expiration dates for those, and sounds like even they've gone past the extended expiration dates. And the question was, what do we do with them? Can we still use them, distribute them, share
Right.
them with a caveat of use at your own risk kind of thing? So I think a quick discussion, I will certainly happy to start it. I think from my perspective that we are a governmental body. I think as a governmental body giving out FDA regulated supplies that we know are expired with I think that for me is a little bit concerning. It's one thing, you know what, I got a headache and I've got Motrin in my car that, well, it expired last summer, but it's Motrin, I'm going to take it anyway, is a much different conversation than my physician saying, well, I get these Z-Pack that are expired, but if you want some here, good luck. It is a different perspective, I think. So I guess, what I do with the COVID kits I've got under my bathroom sink is probably different than I think what we do as a board with them. But I'm obviously happy to hear the discussion. I hate seeing them go to waste, but if they're expired, anybody have any thoughts?
So the FDA has, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Like you just said, is it going to waste or is it preventing it from causing problems? So the FDA, to your point, says if they're expired, they're not reliable. So great. If you have one and it happens to turn positive, you probably have COVID, but I'd be far more concerned about the negatives, the false negatives that people say, well, I took the test as negative and it's just a waste. So I also appreciate I hate to see things go to waste, but you're right. As this board, I don't think that there's a responsible choice other than A, dispose of them, or B, leave them somewhere. And if you take them and they become the ones under your bathroom sink, that's fine. But they're effectively expired and cannot be trusted.
So right on the FDA website, it says the FDA advises people to not use a coronavirus test beyond the extended expiration date. The test parts may degrade or break down, so the kits used beyond the extended expiration date could give inaccurate test results.
I read that.
So, I mean, I think
So I did
that's
my
where we are.
homework.
No,
And
awesome job,
people
Miranda.
have-
Thank you.
No, people have been coming and asking, and actually, Elder and Human Services came and wanted to take 3 cases, and I said, "Excuse me, you can't, I can't give you those." Because I remember this conversation previously that you said they're expired. You know, as a government agency, we could be liable if something happens. They took them, and I said that it's going to be discussed at the board, and I would let them know what the outcome would be.
I mean,
Jim, any thoughts?
So my thought is, I'm with you. It, particularly as a governmental body whose authority is over health, it doesn't seem appropriate to be giving out kits. I know when we tried to use them up very quickly, but we had 3 or 4 boxes here, and when the dates were gone, they went in the dumpster because it's just.
So this particularly kind of bothers me. A population that is highly susceptible to having a severe case, and we're going to use a test that's expired, that the regulatory authority at the FDA says not to use them, and they get a false negative. Oh, that'll be good. No.
Yeah, no, I mean, FDA has made it very clear that
I
it's
agree.
expired is expired. And I think as a board, I think we're all agree along with Jim that they shouldn't be used at this point. Unfortunately, they're trash. They should be disposed of appropriately. And I think we should share that with Elder Human Services, that we certainly understand the importance. We are all in favor of testing, but these aren't appropriate tests at this point. So,
Did you want me?
Question back to the Elder Services would be, if there's a request to have more tests, is there a way for us as a body, Board of Health, to go get more valid tests so that we can give them to other things? So that I think we should figure out a way to do that.
And I think the government still, US Gov, I think there's a test kit. You can get them online.
Yep.
So there's still that too.
I think that may have just ended, or if it hasn't
Really?
just ended,
Okay.
it's ending soon.
Is it okay?
But I'd have to double check. I did see that was wrapping up, but I'm not sure what the timeline was.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we can circle back to EHS and just say, you know what, it's our recommendation that unfortunately they're expired and they shouldn't be used. You know, and then we can see what we can do about facilitating. You know, I don't know what the Neshoba may have. I know we don't have any more.
Yeah, we don't have any kits. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Did
So
you
they
want
can
me
dispose of them ASAP.
Yeah, because I think it is, as long as we double check that they are in fact past the FDA extended expiration dates, they're unfortunately trash.
Okay.
And I would reach out to the Elder Services and recall those test cases. And if they gave them out to people, they need to recall them from those people as well, because they're not valid tests, in my opinion.
Dan, did you want me to send a memo to EHS or?
If you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Okay.
And it gives Brenda the opportunity not to be the bad guy.
I'm
Yes.
happy to write.
I should have been a
She,
test
she,
police.
she has to live in the office.
I was
You
like,
know-
no,
you know
don't
the
take
office.
those.
I can mention that we had a discussion at the board meeting, and I can pull in the FDA information and say, as a health body, the board really it can't endorse the use of these products because they've gone past the expiration date. Shouldn't be used.
So
Thank you.
people can still get them for free right now. COVID.gov. It's back up and running in the fall. So if you haven't done it, I think since September or November is when it started back up. So if you haven't gotten one this fall or winter, you can, or for free.
I can include that in the memo too, just so there's an alternative.
Totally.
No, thank you. Perfect. All right. Sorry.
No,
There it was.
I'll ask her offline.
I looked down.
We don't need to do it as a board. I'll ask her offline.
Reporting on the health director position and the fiscal year 25 budget. As far as the budget, we are meeting with FinCom and the select board on Super Saturday. I think it's February 3rd, as I remember. Just reviewing our proposed budget for the year. We'll see where that goes, but we've had a preliminary with FinCom, so now it's just the standard Littleton Super Saturday. What's your status? What your numbers? What's your plan? So we will update with any changes from there. I do know that thank you to Matt Wason and Kevin Baker for spending some time this week on second round interviews with some candidates for the health director position. I appreciate your time this week. I mean, I think at this point it's deliberation. I'm going to say and kind of defer a little bit to Matt, but some deliberation about next steps with those candidates moving forward, not moving forward, and it moving forward with who. So more information to follow, but it is the second round of interviews have wrapped up as of today, correct, gentlemen?
Correct. Quickly, Dan, on the budget, I was talking to Ryan today, and you are on the agenda 9/15, February 3rd. You can make it, right?
Yes.
Okay. He was asking if there was an addition that was made, or you maybe mentioned a line item that had to be added. You're not sure? Okay. If it doesn't ring a bell, don't worry about it. But if there's something that was missing.
Only thing I can think of is that there was, it was not laid out. It was laid out a little bit differently. The Neshoba invoice, I forget if it was combined or separated off. I forget if Neshoba was it two separate? So I think
It's
that
separate.
kind of threw the numbers off, so that there's a nursing service invoice line and a Neshoba, all other services, sanitation, inspection
Correct.
services piece. So I think
Separate from
that
the
was
from the health department. Yes.
right. So I think the only thing it wasn't necessarily adding. I think just making sure that we were covering that those things kind of fall under Board of Health, but they weren't listed. They weren't grouped together. So
He's
I think
got it
that may
then.
have been the thing. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of that looked funny, that we were trying to figure out the numbers that didn't add up, but we realized it's because they had combined or separated something someplace rather than. All right. That gets us to meeting minutes. We have 4 minutes that were in our packet. I'm going to share. Yeah, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
What are next steps regarding the health director position?
So at this point, we have the second round of interviews were 3 candidates. For folks who are curious, we had a first round of interview a few weeks back with myself, Matt Wason from the board, and the human resource director. We interviewed 4 candidates, I believe. We invited 3 back for a second round, which included fresh set of eyes. So it was Matt Wason and Kevin Baker. So we had a different set of eyes from the board without violating open meeting law, violation with quorums, and a number of members of town hall administration. So we had representatives from town administrator's office, the building department, HR, and someone else. Health and Human Services. Thank you. I wasn't there for them, so I couldn't remember. I knew we planned on, but I couldn't remember who it was. So I apologize for that. Basically looking at expanding the sets of eyes, looking at the candidates, and also looking at folks who are going to be working with them on a day-to-day basis in both administratively and kind of bigger projects. So at this point, I think we have some strong feelings from the committee of the candidates and strengths and weaknesses and where we should move forward. We're going to, I think we need to talk with HR about the best way to move forward and make final decisions, and what the town process is of, okay, we've done second rounds. What is the town process for next steps? And whether that's a board decision. I mean, it should be a board decision. But best way to bring that forward, list of candidates, bring candidates back. But we're going to talk with Michelle from HR, the HR director, and see kind of what the best standard process is for, okay, what now? So now the interviews are wrapped up, we can get those answers of process, what's next. That makes sense. But at this point,
Yeah, I
I'm
was just
hoping
wondering if we
can-
needed to hold a special meeting, or if we were going to wait until our mid-February meeting to do anything, because I won't be at that meeting.
Okay. So what that is
February 14th.
February 14th on Valentine's Day. You're not going to be at our meeting on Valentine's Day?
Sorry, I won't be here. It's got nothing to do with Valentine's Day, but I won't be here.
It's okay. We'll double check with Michelle tomorrow for what the normal process is and what her recommendations are. Again, I don't know about you guys. I'm new at this from a board perspective of how we do this. Hiring on the private side or hospital or something is a much different perspective than how does a board hire someone while maintaining some level of, appropriateness and privacy and all those good things. So we'll double check with Michelle tomorrow during business hours and see what her recommendation is for procedural next steps. And then we can decide how to move forward as far as candidates, if that works for everybody. All right. Nope. Thank you for following up on that. Thank you for making sure we were clear. All right. I have 4 meeting minutes in our packet for approval. As long as it's okay, I'm going to go slightly out of order because I'm going to go by the order in the packet because it's just easier. For those who are following along, I believe it is page 84 in your packet is the first set of meeting minutes for January 10th, 2024. Looks like members were present except for Gino Fratelloni was absent for this meeting. And has anyone had a chance, or has everyone had an opportunity to review them? And does anybody have any feedback, edits, or motions?
I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni.
He wasn't
I
present.
was going to say he's muted, but I'm going to take that as an abstain. Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And chair votes yes. So the minutes for January 10th, 2024 have been approved as presented. Apologize. Our next set of minutes is September 27, 2023. Members present. Mr. Baker was absent for this meeting. Any comments, questions, suggestions, edits, or motions?
Make a motion to accept the September 27th minutes as presented.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you, sir. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker. Couldn't hear you, but I'm taking that as an abstain because you were absent for the meeting.
Kevin Baker abstains.
Thank you, sir. Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni. I'm sorry, you're muted, Gino. Yeah, we still can't hear you, sir. All right, I'm gonna continue the roll call vote and we'll come back. Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
thank you. Chair votes yes. Gino Fratelloni? I'm reading your lips. I saw Gino Fratelloni, yes, but you are still on mute, sir. So
And you can
meeting
unmute him
minutes-
if you're a co-host.
Can you hear me
the
now?
ask. Now we can hear you, sir. Yeah, no, I did the ask to unmute, but it didn't go through. So, but now we're here. So the meeting minutes for September 27, 2023 have been approved. Next set of minutes are for August 23, 2023. All members are present. Any comments, edits, corrections, or discussion?
One note, sorry, I didn't get it up to the document, but there are some references to feet and inches that need to be fixed. So like whenever we talk about groundwater offset, it's not from 4 inches to 2 inches, it's from 4 feet to 2 feet.
2 feet.
Thank you.
Apologies, I didn't get that in there sooner.
I just made one small edit to spell a name correctly, and it's all updated in there.
Thank you, sir.
But other than that, I would make a motion to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion, second roll call vote. Kevin Baker?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Kevin Davis?
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni?
Gino Fratelloni, yes. Can you hear me now?
We can, sir. Thank you. Matt Wason?
Matt Wason, yes.
And the chair votes yes. The meeting minutes for August 23, 2023 been approved. I believe we have one last set. Stand by for March 22, 2023. All members present. Any feedback, comments, discussion?
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented for March 22nd, 2023.
I
Second.
have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker?
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis?
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni?
Gino Fratelloni, say yes.
Matt Wason?
Matt Wason, yes.
And the chair votes yes. The meeting minutes for March 22, 2023 are approved as presented. I believe that gets us to the end of administrative matters. Anybody have any correspondence or member input? All right. I do have two quick things. One, for anybody who is interested, there is a student at Littleton High who, as part of their science fair project, is looking for residents with wells. They are going to be doing, I know, thank you. I had the exact same look on my face when I heard about it. Is actually going to be looking for samples of well water here in town to do water quality sampling and look for any possible contaminants or lack of in well water around town, comparing it to tap water in town and looking for any patterns by geographic location. It sounds like, if anybody knows anybody with wells and would like, again, I do not know the scope of the water testing that's going to be accomplished. If this is the water testing that covers everything, if this is just PFAS, just I do not know. Again, it's a student in the high school science fair project, so it could be any of a million things. If you are familiar with Mrs. Finnerty at the high school, she is a great contact and could connect you with that student. If anybody else has any interest, feel free to reach out to me and I will reach out to her and try to make that connection as well. But everybody knows Mrs. Finnerty if you're here in town for any length of time with kids in the school system. So
I don't.
Um,
So Dan, if you
no.
could make the connection, that'd be great.
all right, I will reach out to her and I will try to introduce you to via email if that works, and so she can hook you up with that student working on this super cool project. Hopefully they watched one of our meetings and went, that's a really thing, I should look at that. Which would be great if we
Sure,
could get
that's what it
a
was.
little line in their science fair project. The idea came from the Littleton Board of Health. Only other thing I had was it is that time of year. In May, we'll be having our annual town elections. So anybody out there in the world interested in running for any of a number of boards, committees, and trustee positions here in town, it is time to go talk to the town clerk, pull your papers, get your 50 approved registered voter Littleton resident signatures, return them by March 25th to the clerk's office so that you will be on the ballot if you are interested in running for office. The last day to get your paperwork from them is March 21st, and it needs to be returned to the clerk's office by March 25th. So lots of opportunities to serve our fellow residents. Yes, Mr. Baker.
Will you guys sign my form if I bring it over?
I would be honored to sign your form, sir.
All right. Thank you guys.
As we are the Littleton Board of Health, we actually do in fact have 2 seats on the Board of Health who are up for election or re-election this year. We are staggered. It's 3-year appointments. So we have 2 years with 2 people who are up and then 1 year with 1 seat that is open. I believe actually Gino is currently in the single seat year because he actually was just re-elected last year. This year, both Kevin Baker and myself, I believe our terms will be expiring. So lots of opportunities to serve across our town. So if you are interested in participating in your town government, this is your chance to pull some papers, meet some neighbors, get some signatures, and run for office.
Dan, we'll sign yours too.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That's one.
Good sign.
4.
Yeah, you got mine too. I'll sign for you.
I don't think I can sign my own though. I don't know if that counts.
No.
It should, but
No, okay. I figured
I'm a
you were-
resident. It should count.
They told me I could. I already did.
But your significant other, and if your son was at home,
I will probably see him before March 25th. So yeah, he's a registered voter now. So, all right. Any other comments, correspondence, anything? I appreciate everybody's patience. It is now 10:20. All right. If no one has anything else, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
second,
Motion and a second. We'll call a vote. Kevin Baker,
Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes, Gina Faralloni, yes.
Matt Wason,
No worries, yes.
Good week. Have a good week,
and
guys.
Dan Kane is chair. We vote yes. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, board members. Brenda,
Night,
thank
everyone.
you for sticking out with us for this long meeting tonight. I apologize. Judy from LCTV, as always, it's a pleasure having you back with our board for the first time in a while. Thank you for your patience in being with us tonight.
Thank you.